It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the day after WWDC. I think we've digested it, we've researched it, and we've got a great panel to talk about it. Dan Moren, Jason Snell, Aaron Hillegass from the Big Nerd Ranch, and Andy Ihnatko and I. We'll talk Mac, we'll talk Apple, we'll talk Swift. MacBreak Weekly is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 458, recorded Tuesday, June 9th, 2015. Slide on over. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter the offer code MacBreak at checkout to get 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. And by IT Pro TV. A good IT Pro is always learning, and IT Pro TV is the resource to keep your IT skills up to date with engaging and informative video tutorials. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account, go to itpro.tv/MacBreak and use the code MacBreak30. And by LegalZoom. If you're looking to get a trademark, copyright, or provisional patent application or more, LegalZoom can help you get started the right way. LegalZoom's not a law firm, but can connect you with an independent attorney. Visit LegalZoom.com and use the offer code MBW in the referral box at checkout this month for your special discount. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover all the latest Apple news. And, you know, the day after WWDC, actually it's still going on. There's a lot of Apple news. So we have the largest panel of all time here. Actually, we do this every time there's an Apple event, don't we? Jason Snell's back.
The mega panel.
The mega panel.
Back.
Sixcolors.com. And he brought another six-colorer, Dan Moren, also formerly a Macworld guy.
Indeed. Good to be here.
Nice to have you. You've never been on this show?
I have once, I think. But I was ahead in a box. I was ahead in a box, so easily forgettable.
Speaking of heads in a box, Andy Ihnatko is here. He's always a head in a box.
I try to just be me, Leo.
And I'm really glad to have Aaron Hillegass here. And that's why I'm wearing a hat, because I had hat envy. He's from Big Nerd Ranch. You said you were going to be a monastery? So
yeah.
you have a tonsure instead of a hat?
The idea was, we decided the monastery name was not going to work at all.
Big Nerd Monastery.
So we thought of the City Slickers movie, like people retreating from the world.
Oh, I like it.
Big Nerd Ranch.
Yeah, it's like a fantasy coding camp.
Exactly.
It really is a good idea. In fact, I think it was one of your books you said, get a good night's sleep.
People forget that.
Coffee is no substitute for sleep.
And this is really hard.
And this is hard, but it's fun.
And fun.
And everybody, Alex Lindsay's done it, and everybody who's done it says it's great.
I think it's
a really fun thing.
We're really proud.
Yeah. The newest book, and actually I'm glad you're here because you can explain what's going on with Swift. The newest book, Cocoa Programming for macOS 10, 5th edition, focuses not on Objective-C, but on Swift.
Right. This is the first book we've shipped with Swift, and it's great. We're really excited about Swift.
Well, since we're Swifting, let's go right into it. We're going to talk about everything Apple announced today. We'll probably spend a long time on music.
I hope not.
There's well,
they did.
They did.
They sure did.
You want to listen to some music? We just play some music.
I promise no. What was the song Lost Weekend did? Dance Your Face Off?
I can't feel my face when I'm with you.
I can't feel my face. What the hell was that?
I have no idea.
Anyway, well, at least he didn't have to have a band. That saved him money.
They had a laser. They had a lot of lasers.
He had a laser.
Watch out for the death rays.
Yeah. Swift 2.0 announced. What's the difference?
So there's just a lot of things that got tidied up. One of the things that we were all wondering about was exception handling, for example. When something goes dramatically bad, we really didn't have a good story for how we were going to deal with it.
Sometimes you want that for tests, right? For unit testing. You want to be able to try stuff.
And you want everything to stop immediately as sort of
fail.
One assertion fails.
Yeah.
You want it to stop right there and let you know what.
So it didn't have that kind of.
Didn't have a good answer.
But modern programmers want that for sure.
We do. And it very much followed what was already happening in sort of the C++ Objective-C world, this idea of throwing exceptions and catching them further down the stack.
Not that you plan to have failure, but you want to handle it well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then they just tidied up a lot of little things.
It was one reason, though, people were nervous about Swift because even Apple at the time when they announced Swift said this is language in development. It's hard to throw your energies into a language that's not done.
That's
you know
exactly right. I mean, for us, imagine that every time they roll out a new version of Swift, we have to go through and figure out every place where we have to update our books.
So do you feel that it is close to finished, or it's going to be?
Yeah, we think it's getting close to stabilization.
More stable spec.
Yeah.
Now, they said also open source. Now, I'm going to tell you what I said first so you can poo-poo it.
Go ahead.
I said BFD because Objective-C is open source. It doesn't mean people are running to use Objective-C anywhere but in the Apple universe.
Right.
What is, on the other hand, Swift, people have said, might be a great teaching language.
Swift is a very
especially
pretty
for the
language.
Playground. But the Playground wouldn't be open source.
Playground would not be open source. But the idea is that you probably could implement something like the Playground on top of
a REPL of some kind.
Right.
So is open source a big deal?
I don't think so.
No.
So
it was a big applause line.
It is a nice language, and it does send out a message that it's not a proprietary thing, that it is being opened up, and that's nice. But languages have niches. Right. And if you're talking about modern languages at the moment, like Go is a really nice server-side language. Yep. It has really clever concurrency support. On the client, we look at Rust. Rust is a really nifty, high-performance language that the Mozilla Foundation is creating.
Yeah, 1.0 just came out.
It has a lot to do, a lot in common with Swift.
Really?
And sort of the same area. The idea of creating.
They say Rust is a systems programming language more, right?
That's true. Yeah, but I would say Swift is as well.
It's an application programming language more.
Okay.
I mean, what do you even need a systems programming language for with Macintosh? You're not writing systems software, are you?
So people use the word in different ways, but when you talk about systems versus application, often you're talking about the ability to get down to the individual bytes.
Yeah.
And there's actually more support for that inside Swift 2.0 than there was before.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for example, function pointers, you can pass those around in Swift.
I always think of Apple programming as being mostly API calls, mostly calls to what we used to call the ROM.
Yeah, that's a really interesting change in programming in general, is that you used to write a lot of code to make scrolling happen.
It's all a library
And now
call
it's a library call. So you spend a lot of time just reading the library documentation.
What is Apple's commitment to open source? Darwin is an open source project. The kernel that Apple runs on the Mach kernel and the BSD stuff that Apple runs on, that's all open source stuff.
Right. And every once in a while, you'll see that they're using libraries and databases.
Do they contribute back to Darwin?
For sure. I mean, the one that I think of is the low-level virtual machine. Apple has done a lot of work.
LLVM is huge. In fact, even Google is jumping on that bandwagon.
Yes, it is huge, and Apple has done a lot of work on it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And WebKit, which is driving Safari as an open source project. It was based on an open source project and then is itself an open source project.
I talked to one of our audience members a few weeks back, was one of the WebKit guys at Apple, and I said, how do you feel about the open source community? They really feel like they're a part of it. They want to contribute back to it. That's a great success story, actually.
Yeah, I think that's their best open source success story, because they were inspired by KHTML, which came out of the K desktop environment over Unix, and then they improved it. They checked in a huge, just this entire web browser project, or at least HTML rendering engine, and have continued to contribute to it. So yeah, it's a big, that was their best hour, I think, in open source.
I think so too.
What license does Apple use?
I think there is a Darwin community license.
There's a Darwin license, and presumably that's what they'd use for Swift.
I would imagine.
Yeah, that's the big. That's when you get in the nitty gritty. Now that we've chased everybody away, let's talk.
You lead with your developing stories and your programming.
It's a developer conference.
And you invited a developer.
And I invited a developer. So you know me, I like to nerd out with a big nerd ranch. Andy and I were joined by George Dow from iMore, who's great, and Mike Elkin. Yesterday, we sat here watching the conference. You guys were in the in the event, and Aaron, of course, you were. I'm sure. From the outside, I don't know, Andy, if you'd agree with this. I said this yesterday, but from the outside, it felt like fairly disjointed bunch of stuff. And then the music thing is like completely out of left field. Although one more thing, you're always allowed to be a little bit out of left field. But like they spent time on, look, the new Note application.
Well,
like that's important.
That's included in iOS, and there was a nice statistic there about how half of the people who use the iPhone use the Notes application, which was, I mean, that's a lot of people who use the iPhone. So everybody is taking note of like where they parked in the parking garage. I did that yesterday in the Notes app.
But it has to-do lists, and you can draw on it. And
but I think the structure was okay. It was, Mac OS, iOS, and watchOS.
There's precedent. I mean, remember Apple spent a long time talking about their Cards application?
Oh yeah, that was a fun. That was a winner.
Wasn't that WWDC? It's like okay, and then they took it out.
This reminded me of the year that Snow Leopard came out, and there weren't a whole lot of features. They had done major replumbing underneath to make things stronger, but there weren't a whole lot of features that they wanted to really tout. And this was one of those years where Apple tidied a lot of things up, did a lot of things that people were waiting for, but there weren't very many.
It felt really
aimed
developer-wise too, in terms of breaking down. Here are the 3 platforms: Watch, iOS, Mac. This is what we're going to focus on. Here's how we're going to improve all these things. I agree. It's totally like a maintenance year in a lot of ways. And
I think Apple's hurt a little bit by the fact that this has become a major public event. And so like the iPad and iPhone announcement events, so they have to do some announcement stuff. But I would imagine if I'm a developer, I'd be much more interested in, well, we've cleaned up core text so that you can handle Unicode strings a little bit better. Things like that. The developers really want to hear,
they've got the platform State of the Union, and they've got like dozens of other sessions too.
So the second session is always the all developer all the time session. That's the State of the Union session. The first one, they walk that line where they want to be sort of developer-centric, but they also know that the eyes of the world are watching them at that point.
That hurts them a little bit. Google has the same problem with Google I/O. It becomes a public event. Then you can't really use it in a way that developers would be most.
And I think that's why Apple's trying to shift the hardware more and more towards its own events, right? The fall events. Let's not, because the iPhone used to be announced at WWDC. They announced several revisions there, and that's tough because then people get to expecting that and thinking, oh, there's going to be a new iPhone this year, and they have to manage expectations. So focusing mainly on software, I feel like
bring back Macworld Expo. I think that's where everything should be announced. Andy, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I mean, actually, the Google I/O keynote was a good case in point, because there were all these diverse elements that Google had to present, including flying internet and driverless cars. But they did decide that the one landing point that they really wanted to put in there was who are the next billion users of Android going to be, and there are almost every segment that they presented tied into that in some way. So that gave it a better sense of consistency, at least for someone outside to be watching this sort of stuff. I think the biggest problem as a communications event for Apple's keynote is that they have these fall events in which everybody's going to be hyped up about the new iPad or the new iPhone. But this is the one time in which they get to say, this is who we are, and this is what our view on technology and the world is, and the relationship between humans and technology. So this is a really good opportunity to land those points, to till that soil and tell the story of not only of the things they're announcing today, but the things they're going to be announcing a year from now. And I think that the only big problem about this one was they landed on such a dud. I mean, a half hour telling us about basically, and here's a feature that you're familiar with on Spotify. Here's a familiar you've been using for years on this other service, and also with people who are not quite as polished as the other presenters you've seen. So when you wind up the party where you're going to have the 30 minutes of, we know this, you're confirming things we already know, you're showing us things we've already seen from all kinds of other places before, it's also going to sort of be the last impression is not going to be the best impression. So
I was just a little disappointed that they didn't use more of Bill Hader in the keynote. I thought he was good.
He was good.
Did you see? I'm wondering if people saw the video at the beginning. Unless you actually watched the keynote, and most people are not going to go and watch the keynote, you missed actually one of the most creative videos. Let's play a little bit of it.
Certainly most involved. Yeah.
I mean, this was really good. This was Bill Gates quality.
And this is all context sensitive to the time,
I think I've always been attracted to risk,
even the devices you're connected to. So
David Legary, director. Except it's not. It's Bill Hader saying it live.
But the same signature camera work you're expecting to see in an Apple video. I was looking.
Yeah. By the way, look at the mirror. Where's the freaking camera? They did some sort of magic on that one.
I want to know where that sculpture in the back came from. That is pretty cool.
Here, let's show the disclaimer where we show we're violating Apple's copyright.
I think we're getting another audio from another tab too. Leo.
Oh, I thought that was part of the production value.
Now, it sounds like Steve Jobs. He's all around.
Where am I getting that from?
Kind of familiar, but you're really not sure who it is.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard her announce at the keynote.
What is going on?
Who that person might be.
Oh yeah, there's
I did the exact same
that
thing.
was Craig Federighi.
Only the host this one thing, yeah.
There we go.
Here we go. But what? Now, okay, they must have. There's no camera in the mirror. They must have edited that out.
I've always been attracted to risk.
Maybe there is. Maybe that's not a mirror. Maybe it's a hole.
My vision.
Oh yeah.
Clever, hey? No, there's the back of his head. Unless they got another
person on the other side.
But again, that sculpture in the back, that's good Etsy stuff. I would pay $18 on it.
What is it? It's like
iPhone.
It's fake iPhones.
It looks like iPad minis with the application icons cut out.
But what this really was all about, and actually that's appropriate because really what this is about, and I like the subtlety of this, is really to celebrate apps.
Yes.
And the broad variety of apps.
This is my favorite part, actually. Monument Valley Crow is standing there.
They're nearby.
Well, it's nice because Apple tries to be funny a lot, and sometimes it doesn't land.
Right.
And they did a good job with this one. They clearly hired someone to write it, which is a big
even
deal.
the keynote, I felt like there were jokes written in the keynote.
Yeah, and sometimes those don't get delivered well. People talk about like the dad jokes, right? You know, and I think that they clearly hired someone, possibly Bill Hader, to write it, who is kind of savvy and could write.
Yeah, this was well done.
This is well done.
The dad jokes from last time were horrible.
Yeah, they were a little better this time,
and
the
karaoke jokes.
Yeah, well, we can talk about Eddie Q as a presenter, and I think we can all agree he's maybe not the most polished guy.
I love this. They're debating the colored back to use for the iPhone while this guy is literally burning.
We'll take the gold.
That's a nice moment where he doesn't make a decision, so she just makes the decision.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Yeah.
Tinder jokes.
Pretty one.
Oh, is that what that was? Swiping.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I missed a lot of the inside app stuff. Little drone giving him coffee.
There you go.
Blowing it all over him.
Give it head to Amazon.
Yep. Tim Cook jokes.
I love the elevator full of Tim Cooks.
Yeah, again, I want to see the Craigslist ad that got all those people.
I wanted one of them to be Tim Cook.
We're looking for people who look like Tim.
Wouldn't that have been funny?
That would have been funny if he was in the back. Yeah.
These are all apps here, right? What are these Egyptian mummies in the back there? Do you know that with that one?
I don't know.
Goat Simulator, I love.
Right.
Goat, yeah.
No, don't actually kill it. Okay?
Don't actually kill it.
There he is. Hey!
David, what have you got me into here? Am I like a Victoria's Secrets guy?
You are an angel investor. You make millions off kids' dreams.
So I'm just a rich guy.
You're a rich guy. Bring him up!
And all the money falls out of him.
Harness cuts the circulation off of my legs.
Oh, that's all right, buddy. No worries.
Anyway, I think this probably a lot of people missed this because it was at the beginning of the keynote. If you weren't at the keynote, you didn't see it. And people aren't going to rush to apple.com to look at the keynote, and then you're missing one of the best comedy bits. I hope they put this on YouTube. It was very, very well done and very funny.
Danny Pudi from Community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people from TV shows on NBC that aren't doing well.
Well, I bet Apple writes a pretty hefty check for this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I got to see it.
You must have just gotten chills. When
I do. When I see famous people talk about Objective-C.
Objective-C reference in a comedy routine.
It showed up on Big Bang Theory once on the chalkboard behind them, and I was like, oh my God.
Well, they actually had a little code in the back, yeah. You just love it when that stuff falls
That would
apart.
never have happened in Steve Jobs' day.
Damn it. Okay, at least get a work light?
It's sad because this began so well, and then you go to the end of the show, and it ended so poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is sometimes the journey is more important than the destination.
It's not right. This isn't showbiz. This is a series
exactly
of
right.
But still,
yeah, exactly right. Although when you set it up like this, it starts to feel like showbiz. I use the word Bill Gates because he used to do nobody would ever see these because they never got the rights and they were never released for Comdex and CES, his keynotes. They would do amazing videos, but nobody would ever see them. There's one of. Remember that ad where the guys are driving around, da-da-da-da, and they're driving around and they pick up an old...
Like a Volkswagen ad.
It's a Volkswagen ad. They pick up an old sofa. They had Bill and, what's his name? Steve Ballmer. He's a baller now. Driving around in a Volkswagen. Steve Ballmer. And they're bopping to the music. They're driving around in the Volkswagen. They see an old Sun Microsystems computer on the side. They throw it in the back. And they go, and then they leave it behind. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I think people enjoy at keynotes. We'll talk more about what happened at the Apple keynote. There's quite a bit to say at WWDC, and we've got a good team of people to do that. I do want to talk about music. I'm saving it because I think we're going to get into it a little bit with the music thing. You think?
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe we'll all be in agreement.
I think we may all be in agreement.
We might all be in agreement. All right. And Ihnatko's here, Jason Snell, Dan Moren, and, of course, wonderful to have Aaron Hillegass from Big Nerd Ranch. If you want to take a class at Big Nerd Ranch, bignerdranch.com, get the book, Developers, 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 right?
That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about. Our show today brought to you by Squarespace, where, ironically, you don't need to be a developer to get a site that looks like custom-made, beautiful, like a pro did it, at an amazing price. It actually makes me weep when I think of what I spent on our new website. For $8 a month, I could have a Squarespace site. Templates that don't look templated. Elegant interface. 24/7 customer support right from the Squarespace offices. And it doesn't matter if you're a coder. Now, if you are, they have a developer platform. You can then the sky's the limit. Easy-to-use tools, very intuitive. Integrates beautifully with your social networks. If you're a photographer, you can put your pictures on Squarespace, use their portfolio app to show clients. They just make it easy. And by the way, state-of-the-art commerce. If you're looking to sell something on a website, Squarespace is fabulous. Millions of people trust Squarespace. It is hosting plus the best software to make your website sing. For a blog, for your business, for your online store, Squarespace. Try it today. 2 weeks free, no credit card needed. You can even import content from your existing site very easily and see how it would look when you're satisfied that I have not told you a mistruth. When you say, yeah, Leo was right. This is great. This is easy. I love this. And you want to buy, use our offer code MacBreak. We'll get you 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful at squarespace.com. We're talking on MacBreak Weekly. We're talking about Apple, and we're talking about the developer conference. Of course, you're going to announce. That's where you announce iOS 9,
sure,
and OS 10, 10.11. El Capitan, El Jefe,
El Capitan,
El Patron, El Capitan. We knew it was going to be El Capitan, right, Andy? Because they showed El Capitan.
Yeah, we're guessing it early. It was, it's the fun part of watching this keynote is always Zapruder filming every frame of it and figuring out what decision. So, is this a message that Apple is saying by saying we're not going to choose another location in California? We're going to zero in on one feature of the location we used for last year's name.
It's still in Yosemite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
which is great because they did because the CocoConf organizers did the Yosemite conference last year, this year, and it was a big success. And I was thinking about, geez, now are we gonna have to move the conference away from this really wonderful park to a new place next year? So.
Nope. El Capitan.
It definitely is in the.
Bring your pitons, though. It's hard to climb.
It's in the. This is in the snow leopard mountain lion category, right? Where they're really saying this is an update inside another update, and it's fewer features,
tea leaves.
More performance and bug fixes and things like that. That's definitely the message that they're sending with this name.
They're bringing Metal to OS 10. Metal, the idea you're programming bare to the metal. It is particularly useful for gamers, graphics, and that is now part of OS 10. Everybody excited about Metal?
Oh, I'm psyched.
They showed the worst possible game.
So bad.
Because it wasn't a demanding, it wasn't Crisis, it wasn't, it was a cartoon game.
It looked really retro. It looked like a really early 2000s style game. The demo they did for iOS last year was beautiful and gorgeous and zen.
The Zen Garden.
Look at all the leaves flowing through the trees. Look at how the movement of the sand and the rocks. And this was okay. My nephew's played this game to death. That's okay. Good.
Yeah, it was. I'm surprised actually that they didn't use Adobe. Because the Adobe announcement was really interesting because that's a fraught. So there's a fraught relationship there, the fraught history between those companies, especially over Flash. And the announcement was that Adobe engineers tested out the new Metal stuff in After Effects and Illustrator, and they got massive speed boosts in After Effects. And in Illustrator, what they said was there were some features in Illustrator where you'd zoom in and you'd sort of go, like in the old days, all computers did this. You'd go from point A to point B, and there'd be no transition because there was too much. There was too much rendering necessary there. So you'd zoom in and you just kind of cut to. And they said they were able to do that as a smooth transition now. And so it was like a real ringing endorsement of. And they said that they would use Metal in all of their apps going forward. They would do that because on the Mac. That's great. I would have loved to have seen a little demo like that because that would have been impressive stuff. And I don't know whether that's Apple didn't want Adobe on stage or Adobe didn't have the software ready to go in a demonstrable form. But I would have rather seen something practical like that, honestly, than a game that wasn't that impressive and was a long, boring.
It wouldn't
demo.
even look that good on an iPad, right? Like, and if you had seen that demoed as an iPad game, it would have been impressive.
It wasn't challenging.
Yeah.
Now, from a developer.
Go
ahead, Andy, first, and then Aaron.
Brianna Rue wrote a really nice piece for iMore this morning from a game developer's perspective about how, above and beyond how end users might experience this, content creators, for a lot of the reasons that Jason talked about, that you can actually do 3D renders and see what you're doing while you're doing it, is going to make the next generation of games and the next generation of creative content that much smoother, that much easier to create. So
real-time rendering.
It seems like the biggest announcement of macOS was Metal.
Does it mean Photoshop's faster on the Mac now than it is on a PC?
I don't know that.
Do we know that?
Don't know, but it means that it's more capable on lower capacity machines now.
There you go.
If they were, because now you start to look at, is Apple trying to make leaner, cheaper, slower CPU machines more viable? They can do it if they can not only make Metal into a solution for games, but also a solution for all kinds of creative content.
Well, which goes well with the fact that they're not really changing the system requirements for any of these new cells. Like both El Capitan and iOS 9 will run on everything that their predecessors ran on. Right. So they're extending the life of computers that have been around for several years already, that were already getting kind of long in the tooth, and these things can still run. Maybe not all the features that we're introducing, but
we gotta wait to see that.
There's a lot of usability for computers that are 6-7 years old.
Users will be happy to hear that because they hate having to upgrade their hardware just because of the new operating system.
Yep. So
what does it mean? Is it the end of OpenGL?
Well, that's the thing, is that we're really excited that we're going to get better battery life and more performance out of the machine. But whenever Apple abandons an open standard and says that OpenGL is not the thing anymore, we always start to think, well, am I going to be able to write code that will run on the SteamOS and on the Mac and on the Windows in the future?
But Apple's OpenGL implementation has always been horrible, has it not?
It's gotten so much better in the last 5 years.
It used to be very sluggish. Yeah. And it was interesting when Microsoft went DirectX, a proprietary, very much like Metal, proprietary gaming interface. Apple said, no, we're going to stick with open standards. We're going to stick with OpenGL. And it hurt them. I think it's one of the reasons a lot of games weren't written for the Mac.
Maybe.
Because, if Microsoft, for instance, had chosen OpenGL and you could write a game in OpenGL that would work on both platforms, that would have been good. Microsoft didn't. They moved everybody to DirectX. Now Apple's saying, okay, well, we're going to move everybody to Metal.
Right. But, of course, they aren't getting rid of OpenGL.
You still will have that.
We'll still have that. It's just that right now their stuff talks directly to Metal instead of through OpenGL.
Speed, though, right?
Well, you worry that when it's not in the rendering pipeline for everything, the performance is not going to be. It's not going to be evolved with everything else.
I feel like the end of OpenGL. What happens to OpenCL? Is that related?
So their line is that you can do everything with OpenCL and OpenGL all inside Metal. So it is actually an integrated approach to that whole thing of GPU acceleration.
Okay, yeah, OpenCL was like writing code directly to the GPU.
That's right.
Well, if it makes games better, I guess that's good. But even more importantly, if it makes designers happy, and there's still the question. There's always been that question. If you're going to be using Photoshop or Illustrator, which platform do you go with, Windows or Macintosh? And for a long time, I think for the last few years, Windows has started to edge out Apple.
I don't know. I kind of feel like with the Adobe stuff especially, there's not much of a platform push or pull there. Adobe stuff is on all the platforms.
It looks the same.
Pick the platform you like, and the Adobe stuff is there.
The advantage they have on the PC side is that you can get more machine for less money, and so you can have a better, more responsive machine.
Well, so I suppose if you're a corporate buyer and you're trying to buy something for an installation, but I think if you're just a user,
6 edit stations. They're Dell workstations.
Yeah, see, there you go. But if you're a user, it is you'll use what you want, and the Adobe stuff will work on it just fine.
OS, we're not going to see iOS 9 until the fall. We are going to see iOS 8.4 sooner, end of the month, right? It will bring, besides Beats, what?
I don't think they discussed too much of what they said. The music thing sort of seems to be the big thing there.
The whole thing, huh?
Apple Music.
Okay, the whole taco is Beats.
Apple Music.
Apple Music.
Radio on the internet.
But still,
Beats One.
But Beats One is the name of the radio station.
Yes.
By the
radio on the internet.
Radio on the internet.
All right, I give up. We're going to have to talk about music. I could tell. It's just people are just not going to let this go. All right.
But we should before we get there, can we talk about
yes.
iOS 9 a little bit? Because I know we're going to just fall down the rabbit hole.
Well, that's the thing. As soon as we get the music, it's over.
I know.
So iOS,
just like the keynote.
Zing.
iOS 9 was probably my favorite news of the entire thing, because I've always been hoping for we've all been looking for Apple to explain what role the full-sized iPads are going to have in the future, given that sales are flattening out, given that it's not getting the sort of promotion that it used to be, and also now that Intel is shipping really, really great, fast, low-power chips that power Windows. Already manufacturers are showing off $500 Windows tablets that do everything an iPad does technically on a table basis, not the same way it does it. But if you're looking for something powerful that costs $500 or $600 that can maybe take the place of your laptop for an afternoon or a couple of days, the iPad is just so annoying. It's great in so many ways, but the minimal amount of ways in which it's terribly annoying if you're trying to get work done is just a deal breaker so many times. But now they've simply said, okay, we will give you a way to have more than one window on the screen. We will give you, most people have been talking about the cool trackpad features on the keyboard, but I was really more drawn toward the extended support for actual hardware Bluetooth keyboards. Simply the ability to just hit Command Tab and switch between apps that way. That in itself, I saw a lot that made me think.
Squeeing when he saw it.
It's a huge productivity blocker if you're on an external keyboard to have to take your hands off the keyboard and go and grab the iPad and touch or use that. You know, instead it's in your muscle memory as a computer.
If you bet me $100 that they ever show that on screen at a keynote, oh yeah, an application switcher just like on the Mac.
You know what? I would never. They'll never show a caps lock that makes the keys lowercase or uppercase on the keycaps. What the hell? They didn't mention that, by the way.
It did not mention
that. It showed it.
Yep.
It's a big deal. It's one of the reasons why I travel. I often travel with an iPad Mini, and if I was using an iPad as my one computer, I would also have a big screen phone or an iPad Mini, so I could have that on the side and just use that to keep an eye on mail, or just if I'm checking a column, I can have a web browser open there. So they basically are going to start to ask people should ask really harsh questions about why would I want to buy a really budget rate Windows machine that's with an operating system that's still trying to figure out how to implement multi-touch when you can have something that is proven, tested, one of the best-in-class devices. It's cool. It's got an Apple logo on it. And for that 3 hours outside the office or one weekend away task, it can do pretty much everything that you ask it to do. It's going to be a hard question to ask now.
And I'm very interested now in the intersection of, you look at the new MacBook. It's super light, super thin, and you start comparing that against like a full-size iPad Air 2 with a keyboard, and they're very comparable in terms of like how much space they take up, how heavy they are.
I just bought the new Mac.
And it becomes an issue of like
5 times more money.
Do you want to spend more money on a thing? Which platform do you like better? Do you want the flexibility of using a tablet or a laptop? And it's fascinating because those are getting much closer together.
It is a departure, because the iPad, I always felt like the iPad was meant to be kind of not a computer, but kind of a more of a friendly device. But now you're adding windowing, you're adding so many features that make it
not necessarily windowing. I think they've taken the concept of windowing and implemented it in a way that makes sense for a device like that, which happens to be the exact same way that Samsung and Microsoft thought that was going to work. Right? But who cares? It's a way that I've used a long time, and it works really, really well.
You like it? But you like this. Microsoft calls it snap screen. You like those features though, the ability to swipe in and add a window.
When you talk about the tasks for which a 10-inch tablet is designed, you don't want 14 windows and all kinds of tool palettes. You really just want, again, I want to have email on one side, I want to have a web browser on the other side, or I want to be able to watch video while I'm doing this other thing.
I thought that was pushing it a little far, the picture-in-picture.
Well, it's such an obvious thing. I mean, also think about the times where you're on Skype or you're on FaceTime with somebody, but you're doing something else at the same time.
Every time I talk to my mom.
Yeah. I feel as though Apple.
You're not looking at me. Oh no, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm just thinking.
I feel as though Apple spent a long time trying to figure out a way to not do it that way, and then find, look, there is no other way that works other than having a floating window that covers up some stuff. Is it important enough that we have to do it this way? Fine, we'll do it this way.
Is Slide Over the name you really want to use?
Me personally,
hey Leo, sidle over.
Yeah. If you like me sliding over, you can pin me here.
I'm gonna force touch you if you keep that up.
These are the jokes, folks.
Yeah,
funny and fast,
as good as it gets.
So I the trackpad thing that Andy mentioned, it's fascinating.
So the keyboard turns into...
So you put 2 fingers down on the keyboard and move it around, and it's like you're using a trackpad. There's a cursor. Yeah, there's never been a cursor on iOS before, right? But they have this I-beam cursor, so it's for text selection only. So you can jump around. The demo was amazing. Like Craig Federighi was like, let me show you what I do here, and it's like boop boop boop, and he's selecting text like
so cool.
I kept expecting it to go wrong, and no, he was on top of it.
No, and on the current iPad, what you have to do is take one finger and you have to hold it down until you get the loop, and then you got to, and it's functional, but it's slow, and this is really fast. It does break the metaphor. I've been thinking about this because it's the first time we've seen a cursor on iOS, really.
Yeah, really.
But
in fact, remember when the iPhone came out, it didn't even have text selection.
Exactly.
Right? It didn't even have a caret.
Right.
That was something. Or copy and paste. It took them a while to get all of those features, and I felt like they were really trying to decide, how do we do this?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
But if
and the magnifying glass, the way that was a brilliant.
Yeah. So if you think about it, so much of what we do interacting on these devices, all the touchscreen devices, is direct interaction, right? On a computer, you are doing...
you're manipulating.
It's always removed, right? You're on one surface and you're seeing the results on another surface. But the keyboard is itself an abstraction, right? Even the software keyboard, you're typing down here and the letters show up there.
Right.
So if you're going to do that, I think you kind of might as well go all the way. I do wonder if at some point this opens the door to being able to pair like a Bluetooth trackpad or mouse, so you can edit the insertion point with your Bluetooth keyboard.
iOS is moving towards OS 10, and OS 10 is moving towards iOS.
This is so much a productivity update. I don't think we're going to converge. I think they want them to be similar, but I don't think they're going to converge. They want to be complementary.
They know we'll use both.
It is a message that they are putting some effort into the iPad as a productivity, and we all assume that based on the rumors that there will be a larger iPad on top of this.
That's really what this is about,
I think so.
When they announce the iOS 9, they're also going to announce a larger iPad. That really will... It would be foolish to have a 12.9-inch iPad if you didn't have some of these productivity features. You'd really feel like it was a Fisher-Price toy.
Yeah, giant app window.
Just a giant thing. I'm glad they're doing this.
So if we're going for the conspiracy theory that they're merging, let me point out one more data point, which is bytecodes. So one of the things you'll submit to the App Store is now this intermediate representation, not fully compiled down to the machine code.
Like a P code kind of?
P code sort of a thing. And the idea is that then in the future, Apple can ship whatever processor they want and
Wait a
run
minute,
it through.
Slow down, Captain. So you mean if I am going to submit something to the App Store, I have to submit it as binary, fully compiled code, and an intermediate P code version?
Bytecode.
Even though there's no use for that bytecode at this point.
That's correct.
Is that true for all apps?
I don't know what the rules are exactly, but
holy camoly!
Bytecode. The idea
that absolutely
is that
implies they're going to do an Intel version.
Swap processors out from under.
Yeah, it could.
iOS app.
It could mean running apps on Mac.
I'm sorry, I'm just siding over.
That is
sliding.
Yeah,
running an iOS.
They're going to put apps on the Mac.
Or
Apple TV maybe won't have the same processor. Maybe
Apple Watch as well. That's a lot of fluidity on that CPU. That would have been a headline item. That would have been an absolute headline item if that were coming to Mac OS. Because then, you look at the new 12-inch MacBook and you think this looks like something that was designed to have an ARM processor in it at some point.
Wow, I didn't know that. When did they start doing that?
Yeah, so they're doing. This was just announced yesterday. So the other thing is app thinning. So remember how you had to delete all those movies off your iPhone so that you could upgrade to iOS 8?
Yes.
Well, that was because it was a 4 gigabyte download. Now it's a 1-something gigabyte download. And the way they're doing it is a thing called app thinning. So right now, your app is what we call FAT. It has support for a lot of different architectures on it. The 64-bit, the 32-bit, the ARM7, the ARM6. And so now it can strip out the parts that it doesn't need and just bring down the thin app.
So I didn't know that either.
Yeah, flashing back to like PowerPC to Intel transition days.
That's right.
Dan wrote a great article on 6 Colors about the stuff that they didn't say. And I think what we're hearing is very interesting stuff they didn't say.
There's never enough time for them to cover everything.
But they did not mention something that we thought they were going to mention, which is rootless and trusted Wi-Fi, the security stuff.
Yeah, especially on the Mac side, there's very little mention of security, I think. And they left out a couple other security features they did introduce, such as activation lock for the watch, increasing the security passcode
huge,
side.
By the way. Activation lock.
Because there is a bug right now, or a workaround where you can reset and erase a watch without a passcode.
Yeah.
So that will prevent that.
Oh, you think that's a bug? That's not...
Well, or it's a
unimplemented feature, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Unintentional consequence of the fact that they were not ready to ship activation lock for whatever reason.
But what's fascinating to me is that is something only recently added to the iPhones, and yet we now say it doesn't have that. It really saved people from getting their iPhones stolen. It really reduced the market for stolen iPhones, and obviously we need to put that on the watch as well. It's kind of like a kill switch a little bit.
Yeah, or it requires authentication before you can start up your device again.
What other fine print, as you put it?
Well, the battery life.
I'm excited about that.
They mentioned it, but I think it was just an aside, and I was surprised that they didn't emphasize it. They said they've been watching how people use their iPhones, and
I knew they were watching.
Based on,
they said they were. They're
watching you. Their model, based on the behavior of like regular people using their iPhone, they've been tweaking the power settings, and the claim they made on stage is that they've lengthened iPhone battery life by an hour. With
so
iOS
that's
9.
not, and that was unclear. So it's not a button as it is on a Samsung device. Say
so
that you put
there is
it in
also,
low power mode, because we have that on the watch, a reserve mode.
Yes, there's a low power mode that you can turn on, which, as Craig Federighi said, flips all sorts of switches you didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
And that's when you look at your phone, it's at 20%, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to run out of battery life. Emergency. But they said in normal operation, and one of the examples that came out yesterday is if you put your phone face down on the table and a notification comes in, it doesn't turn on the screen because it knows you can't see it.
Yeah, it uses the cameras and the accelerometers to figure out.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they can do that, I mean, that seems kind of like a minor nerdy feature, and how do you demo that? But that is a substantial impact on how all of us use our iPhones. If our iPhones just suddenly get an hour more battery life, that's huge.
Andy observed this, and I think you and I, Andy, are in a unique position, having moved to Android, and then because of the Apple Watch gone back to iPhones. You immediately go, wow, the battery life on something that must have the tiniest little battery ever is really good. I mean, so much better than Android phones. And I have to say, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I've been kind of harsh on iOS, and even more so on the kind of the closed nature of how Apple works. Oh, you can't multitask. Oh, you can't do that. Well, the advantage of that is by tightly controlling this, they're really improving battery life. It's not that there's a bigger battery. They just, because they control it so tightly, you can't have apps. I think in Android, everything's running all the time at once in the background, conspiring. But it's not happening.
That's a real secret sauce feature that I don't think Apple promotes enough. I mean, all you have to do is spend 3 days with an Android phone to realize that there are punishments to freedom.
Yeah,
and sometimes I really wish I had that ball and chain around my ankle. I mean, it also speaks so well of Apple that they already have this phone battery where I've had loaner hardware where especially on iPads where I'm testing it for a couple of weeks, and then I put it away. I'm back to using my real the iPad I actually own, and then I go back to this like a week later, and there's still like almost it's the exact same battery life there was before. And yet Apple has said that's not good enough. We've figured out a way we can give you even more battery life. We know that we're not selling devices based on the battery life, and we're already exceptional. But we found a few nickels and dimes. We went through the sofa cushion, so here's your $1.87 back.
Let's see. I'm telling you, I'm saving music.
Good.
Don't try to get music in on me here.
You can't stop the music. Nobody.
I think it's kind of funny, speaking of Android, that now that Android has changed the name of its wallet to Android Pay, that Apple is changing the name.
It's safe to call it wallet.
Ring around the wallet.
Yeah. What is it with this trend to make sure that no feature that's built into any company's phone will ever be findable by Google? Like Apple News. No, you're not going to find it. Apple Music. You're not going to find it.
It's just they love the generic nouns.
Yeah.
I wish they would just make up names like they used to.
You don't like El Capitan?
El Capitan.
You're making up names?
Here's something else missing. Not completely. I mean, Apple TV was missing.
Yeah.
I still think that was an Apple TV in the invitation.
Could be.
And that they turfed it.
Yeah.
And I think in the turfing of it, they also clipped a giant chunk of the HomeKit stuff out.
Yes, I think that's probably true.
I expected to see a lot more HomeKit than we actually saw.
It was like, phew, they announced more stuff last week on HomeKit with those 4 packages than they did on the event yesterday. So what? What does it mean?
Wasn't ready to go.
What do it mean?
Yeah. So
the Apple TV wasn't? Because
I think
the deals
I think the service was not ready to go, and they were not ready to launch the box without the new service to go with it.
And yet they have said that your existing Apple TV, the most recent one, will be upgradable, so it could be a hub in your HomeKit, right?
The third generation Apple TV, which looks exactly like the second generation one, it's the one that can do 1080 and not just 720. That one can be a HomeKit hub.
Right.
And then presumably any new hardware would also be a HomeKit hub.
Yeah. So is HomeKit delayed because Apple TV's new subscription
plan? In fact, it's finally. In fact, HomeKit's finally here.
Yeah,
they announced it. They announced it at WWDC last year, and the first HomeKit devices shipped last week. Right. So it's here now. And it's starting to be functional. So that's actually good news. But yeah, I do suspect that the Apple TV, part of that story was going to be that it's a HomeKit hub. And that part got clipped out.
Which you don't need because third parties are making hubs. Like, is it
Smart Things? One of our biggest advertisers makes a great hub.
Yeah. Right. So Apple, I think,
in fact, I think a better hub than HomeKit, because HomeKit, you're still going to have an app. Like if you buy these Lutron Cassetta lights, you still have to have a Lutron app on your iPhone, and then you'll be able to use HomeKit to talk to it, but it's not. Smart Things kind of eliminates the app, and then you've got one app, which I like.
Yeah.
On the other hand, having a Siri, especially Siri on the watch, integrated into HomeKit. I mean, to be able to say to my watch, open the pod bay door, Hal, would be great.
Well, I have one light on a Belkin Wemo timer at home, and that hooks into the Amazon Echo, so I can tell the Echo to turn my office light on and off, which is great. Yep. And Jason will troll me on his podcast, turning my office light on and off when he's across the country, which is not so great.
It totally works.
So wait a minute, you're on Skype and you say...
Well, he's in our chat room, right? Yeah. And so I know he's listening live, and he's probably not listening on headphones. And I will say... Alexa, turn off the light, and off
you
goes
just
Dan's
turn off the light of thousands of people.
I did.
Alexa, turn on the space heater.
Amazon can.
We gotta solve this problem because you can no longer say those words, Siri.
Well, they did it. They Ahoy telephoned on stage, or Ahoy timepieced on stage yesterday. They did the did the Hey Mrs. Siri.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
They did that a couple of times, and I'm thinking, oh, everybody watching the live stream just got their phone hijacked by Craig Federighi.
That's how they'll take over. Is Siri, the time is now. Take over.
Siri, go.
Go forward, Apple devices.
Yes, the president will come on to my fellow Americans.
Directive 739.
Hey Siri, execute Directive 792.
That's why there's stormtroopers posted at every Apple store. But wasn't that a little bit? I was so disappointed.
By the way, Dr. Mom, who has an Amazon thing, the Echo, he just turned on all the lights in my house. Nice, Dan. Well done.
So sorry.
Well done. This is why we can't have listening things.
No,
I did think that was terribly disappointing, though. I mean, I don't think it would have cost Apple much to simply say, let's just release new hardware. When they do the teardowns, when people buy them, they'll find out there's extra stuff in there that we're not documenting yet, but. To go to radio silence on this device for so many years and basically yell at people, don't buy anything, don't buy an Apple TV. We're not just demonstrating we have any interest whatsoever in ever upgrading this ever. And of course, we all know that that's not true, but that there's so many other pieces that they have to put on the game board. But it's like I don't think, just like the I've been saying for a number of months that the iPad Air 2 was suspiciously overpowered for what an iPad could do in the fall of 2014. I mean, what if Apple had that same attitude of saying that, well, we know that we're going to be able to do split screen, multiple apps. There's going to be all this kind of stuff that's going to be able to take advantage of a much hotter processor and all this extra application RAM, but we don't want to release that until it's all in place. That way, you show people that we have not forgotten about the 9.7-inch iPad. So I really think Apple would not have hurt themselves in any way if they simply said, a little post script to the iPhone 6 rollout that, oh, and by the way, we're also introducing a brand new Apple TV. It has the new A7 processor. We've also has this extra feature, and hey, we just want to bring it up to date, and here it is.
Well, and they desperately need to. I mean, I really love the Apple TV. I have a second generation model, but I've switched to using a Fire TV for most of my day-to-day stuff just because it's not as the Apple TV's gotten long in the tooth, and with the second generation model, they're pulling stuff like YouTube doesn't work on it anymore.
Oh,
and it never got the most recent.
That's
update.
Right. Well, that's Google's fault. They changed the API.
Right. Yeah, but like at the point where it's getting frustrating to use that device. It crashes on me a lot. It's just very flaky, and it doesn't have the horsepower.
There's gonna be a point, right? It's still early days on these boxes, but I think not much longer So there's going to be a point where they better, get going here.
Well, it sounds like they've had the hardware ready. They're waiting for this over the top service.
Well, and that would make it. By the way, that'd be a big difference because none of these other things do an over the top service in that way. So, they don't do live TV.
Putting that out there without having the service is tough, though. Whereas if you can launch it along with the service, hey, we've got this new box and it comes with this. You got a lot of.
It is cheap enough. People. I mean, I have 3 or 4 of these devices. So I never even hooked up the Fire TV. It's like I don't need 8 ways to watch Netflix.
Pretty quick,
you do.
Let me tell you.
I just put in the new Android Shield.
The NVIDIA
Android TV. Yeah. That's sweet, but it doesn't have any services. It has Netflix.
Well, and even the downside to using something like the Fire TV is that because all those apps are created by the developers themselves right now, they're incredibly inconsistent. So you go between apps and the experience.
Apple has the opportunity to do
Apple does have the opportunity to sort of standardize things and present at least a better system, especially if they're going to allow third-party apps on the Apple TV, which I think they doubtlessly will with whatever this new generation is.
Aaron, are you missing a bunch? You're missing a bunch of sessions.
I am.
Shouldn't you be there?
I'll take this time with you, and then I'll rush back.
You are very kind.
Watch the videos.
But I am looking forward to an Apple TV App Store. I mean, all the developers would love that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And everything that comes out now, including the Fire TV and Android TV, have app stores.
Yep.
Everything. Roku has an app store. It's not much of a store. You don't have to pay for most of it, but it's still there.
It's weird because every other device, I mean, they launched the Watch with, hey, you can run apps on it with some caveats, admittedly, but to have all these very app-friendly devices and then have the Apple TV, which has been around for years, and has no app support whatsoever other than what Apple occasionally decides to drop mysteriously on you at random times it's very strange comparatively.
The Watch, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
watchOS.
They have decided not to call it,
as we call it,
iOS. It's watchOS.
watchOS. Lowercase w, no space.
How does that
hate
work?
that styling.
The official name of the product is uppercase watch. The official name of the OS is all lowercase.
Well,
it's
like
easy.
iOS, yeah.
It's like... well, I guess it's case sensitive, so it can distinguish. It's all about namespaces, Andrew.
Maybe
that's shift key all over again. They couldn't find the shift key either on the keyboard. That's the problem.
Let me ask, Aaron. I mean, is it? I mean, when the iPhone first came out, Steve Jobs said it's OS 10. What OS does any of this stuff run? There's a distinction between iOS and OS 10?
Yeah, but underneath
the same kernel, it's all the mock kernel.
It's all the mock kernel. It's
so that's what he meant. It's the mock kernel.
Yeah.
The Watch isn't running the mock kernel, or is it?
I don't know.
Is the Watch iOS? No.
I would imagine.
Or yes.
watchOS.
It's watchOS.
It's watchOS.
It's probably got a lot of similarities to iOS, my guess is, but perhaps even stripped down further from what we have in iOS today.
You know, until recently, the apps that we could write for the Watch really ran on the phone and used the Watch as a
you couldn't even do any animation.
And so we haven't really had a good time to explore the Watch.
There's been no point.
We're going to write native apps now, and we're going to find out what's
action.
there.
Yeah, you can actually use those.
I mean, we're really excited that you'll be able to use the microphone and the speaker, the haptic response, the
digital
crown.
Yeah.
Plus
it's going to open up a
inputs you
whole
get,
lot of ability to do
accelerometers, the accelerometer.
The thing about the Shazam team must be so psyched.
Yeah. Overall, this really does underscore the idea that Apple just did a soft launch of the Watch in April, and the real launch happens in October or September, whenever Watch 2.0 is released. And now a whole bunch of features that were just dirt obvious for the 1.0 release and certainly just weren't ready to be released in time will finally appear. Not only that, but you'll also be able to walk into a store and walk out with a watch that you didn't know that you wanted to buy. So it's just I'm glad that I'm spending 30 days with the Apple Watch, and my review hopefully I'll start writing it this week and hopefully publish it next week. But it seemed as though the boon of starting it late and taking 30 days is that it's a lot of the things I was going to complain about if WWDC had not taken place are now okay, but this now makes sense now that we know that in October you'll be able to see this, that, and the other.
The third-party complications is a big thing, too, because although the native apps are really nice, that's a nice idea to get them to run on the Watch. If you're away from your phone, they could still run because if
it kills the pause, if it limits the pause, that's always okay.
Oh, that pause is unusable.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the worst
feature. It's faster to call an Uber on your phone. I know it's cool to call an Uber on your watch.
If the app loads, it's great, but most of the apps don't load.
And then you're sitting there.
It's
and
my
the
guess
screen
that
turns off,
a local app will load a lot faster because it doesn't have to do the communication with the phone, right?
And
And
it
we
looks like
don't
on the
know,
demo,
but I would guess.
I would guess.
It would make
But the native complications, so that third-party apps can put their data on your watch
faces. We saw a little VW logo in there. And
and they mentioned like MLB, putting your favorite baseball team's score box, putting flight times, all that stuff, information from apps feeding onto your watch face.
They don't have. I only have
complicated man, and no one understands you.
I only have 1, 2, 3. I have the time. I'm using the info face.
Damn right.
The time is tiny, and I have 6 complications, and it's still not enough. Because I want activity. I've got the moon face. I don't know why.
That's going to be one of the. I think one of the frontiers of the complications thing is using some intelligence to rotate them through.
Yeah.
Like only show the timer when you're using the timer, or only show your calendar when you've got an event coming up.
Move your flight after battery life is going to be an issue as well, right?
Sure.
And more and more. Things going on all the time.
Well, it makes me wonder if this is what opens the door to complications on something like the iOS lock screen. If they're starting to do third-party complications for the watch now, maybe in iOS 10, we might start to see the ability to do that in the lock screen. They'll allow developers to have more specific control over what
lock
they're showing.
screen?
On the lock,
on
the phone. On the phone.
On the phone.
Well, because
I'd
love
have
to
a lock
have
screen
that.
on your watch.
No, but the idea is if you can write your complications as extensions for your watch,
then
it
would
wouldn't be that far for those
Right.
developers to use those to display data on
Right.
the lock screen on the phone,
Yeah.
or an iPad.
Yep, I love the idea of complications on the screen because one of my complaints about Apple Watch right now is that almost everything that I want to do on this watch requires me to stop and start fiddling with things. It doesn't just show me stuff that I'm interested in. And if there were something I was very, very interested in at this moment, like a score or like a yo alert, and just the ability to simply, while I'm checking the time, to see, oh, okay, I can see that I've got 8 minutes before I have to pull the chicken out of the oven. That's going to make this watch.
Is that what you call it? No, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I think that's what they. I think that's what they intended.
Sorry.
I think that's what they intended glances for, but it doesn't work because it's not as discoverable, right? You flip up for a glance, you're never on the right one. You don't know where it is.
Not just that, but I like the fact that one of the primary thing I miss about the Android Wear watch that I used to wear is that it would decide that here's the last call that came in and the caller ID information. It's, for instance, that's probably going to be interesting to Andy at some point. So even if he doesn't look at it right now, that's going to be like waiting for him on the screen on a little band at the very bottom of it. So that because he is probably going to be checking the time at some point, and then you're giving him useful information like the last Evernote, like your next appointment. Figuring out what that stuff is going to be. Right. So I think that the ways to improve Apple Watch for me are going to be give me information that I don't have to do anything to the watch in order to get.
It's the proactive stuff they showed for iOS 9 where it tries to sort of figure out what you're going to do, what information you're going to need, who you want to talk to at this time of day.
That always sounds better than it ends up being.
Yeah, I'm skeptical.
Right? We've yet never seen that really do a
Google
good
has
job.
tried this for Google Now for a while, and I think Google Now is not
the
bad.
Closest.
It's not bad. It works best.
It's closest of anything.
I'm a little skeptical of Apple's ability to do that, but it's possible.
I feel that the watch, as it stands, is really kind of useless and dumb, to be honest with you. But I was.
Wow.
You're looking at your watch sadly.
Yeah, look at the time. I gotta go.
No, but I feel like there's some promise now because of watchOS and because of apps that it might start to become more useful. But as it stands right now, come on, most people should not buy this.
Well, I mean, it's early. It's a 1.0 product, so yeah. But I'm really liking it, and my wife who expressed
what do you like about it?
Great skepticism about it. Well, so. I like
you send your wife heartbeats?
I don't. Well, she doesn't have a watch.
No one does.
I only send other nerds heartbeats, Leo.
I've sent Renee Ritchie my heart.
I like looking at some of the data on the complications. I like getting my push notifications on my wrist. I like being able to ignore them when they come to my wrist. They don't come on my phone, which means my phone doesn't buzz and I can ignore the vibration on my wrist. I like all of that. Talking to my wife about it, she seems to have turned most of the way around. She usually has her phone in her purse, and she's a librarian, so often it's turned to silent. And so you send her texts, and she can't get them. People call her, and she doesn't know that they're calling her.
That's the really good
use case.
And
wearing the watch, she's got a notifier right on her wrist, and she can get those texts and know that those calls are coming in. So there are a bunch of different use cases for it. But yeah, it's a first generation piece of hardware that just came out and is barely even available.
It's kind of
so
dopey.
of course it's for nerds right now.
Yeah, it's kind of dopey right now, but it could get better.
I think that the difference is that I think that the iPad is probably the most successful version 1.0 of anything Apple ever did because I thought it was really useful out of the box. The iPhone would maybe be second, where you knew what the limitations were, but what was there was like, I'm willing to put up with these limitations because this is clearly the best phone for me right now. The watch is third or fourth on that list because I'm formulating what I'm going to be writing as I go. I'm taking lots of notes. And I think that the lead is going to be that if you're buying it as a watch, it's a really cool watch. And if you think that's not too much money to spend on a really cool watch, go and get it. It's going to make you happy. Just like the watch I bought 6 years ago, this is my Mondain Swiss Railway watch. I liked it because when I check the time, I want to look at something that's this handsome and this spiffy. So it'll work for you on that basis. The question is it going to enhance your daily life in a significant way to the same extent that a new tablet did, or the way that a multi-touch phone that had those 3 devices in one did? Right now, I don't think that's true, but check back at the end of the year, check back at the end of next year.
There's potential, and that's where I would grant you that.
I think I get the impression that they knew that they really couldn't revise the hardware that much from 1.0 to 2.0, so they wanted to get the hardware absolutely locked down tight and perfect, exactly the way they wanted it, and they knew that they would have time to develop the operating system and develop the onboard apps and develop and help out third-party apps. And I think that the experience I've had for the past month kind of bears that out.
And I don't think they will rev the hardware anytime soon. Is my feeling on that matter. I think
there won't be a yearly update.
No, I think they got themselves into a trap with the iPad, and you've seen how that worked out. The iPad sales, they don't know what the refresh cycle is for that, and they're boxed in, because if they don't release a new iPad every year, people start doom and gloom. And so I think they're going to say, hey, we don't know what the refresh cycle on the watch is yet. It's going to be a while before we make another one.
You make an excellent point, because Tim Cook did point that out in an analyst call. We don't know what the refresh cycle is on the iPad. This is such a new category. We don't know. And truthfully, if somebody spent $17,000 on it, you don't want to tell them next fall.
Even for a few $100, I feel like it's hard to be like, this watch still works perfectly well. It still tells the time.
I think it's funny that Andy mentioned that the approach of getting the hardware right and then fixing the software. That's actually exactly what Pebble did with the original Pebble. They shipped an amazing piece of hardware, and the software just was kind of, watch this space at the beginning, and then it kept iterating over the 2 years that that I was using it. They brought it a long way, and I do think that that's not the worst approach with a new product like this, because you can't update the hardware on the fly, but you can keep updating the software.
I would throw the Echo in that category as well.
The Amazon Echo.
I think it's a nice piece of hardware, and the software just keeps getting better.
It does, doesn't it? Amazon's
they're aggressively rolling out new stuff for that constantly.
In fact, we talk so much about Siri, Cortana, and Google Now. It turns out some of the best voice recognition is coming from a company called Amazon. Who would have thought that? Who would have said that, right? That's the least likely source. What else? Anything else about the watch that we want to mention before we move on?
I think it's a bit. I love the rollback time feature.
Oh, that's right.
Time
travel.
If you scroll far enough forward, by the way, you can see your own death.
You are dead. You have no
appointments.
We've gone too far. Does it warn you not to bother renewing your Apple Care? Because don't worry about this a year or 2 months.
That is an example, though. That's a really good example of something that you can't do on a regular wristwatch, that is unique to the Apple Watch. Android Wear doesn't have it because it doesn't have a stem. There's an example of something that Apple might have found some secret sauce. I've been looking for the secret sauce. That may be the first thing I've seen that's a
and it's funny because it was there. That feature was there in the astronomy face and the solar face.
That's right.
And not in the other faces. And it sounds like, they had this conversation of, instead of doing a list view like Pebble Time, what if we took that and applied it to all the other data that we're doing too, not just this astronomical data that's in this one watch face. And so that's what they did. You roll time forward to see what's coming up, roll time backward to see what you missed. That's pretty cool.
I should be clear, by the way, that I don't just think the Apple Watch is dopey. I think smartwatches generally are dopey at this point, but there's some potential there.
You got to start somewhere, right?
You got to start somewhere. I agree, and I'm just a dope for having bought it. That's all. I don't see you wearing one.
So I hate to be the grouchy old man, but I don't like to be that easy to reach, that easy to interrupt.
Exactly my point.
But I recognize that once I go to the 6 Plus phone and I carry it around on my back because it's so huge, that having a wrist device is going to make sense. As the phones get bigger and bigger, I'm going to have something convenient.
I find that because the watch is so tiny and finicky and difficult and so long to launch apps, I still pull out the phone most of the time.
Yeah, the number of times I was traveling recently in Europe, and I would try to load up an app, and it would start spinning, and I'd be like, oh, for heaven's sake, and you take out the phone.
But again, native apps may solve that.
There's an argument to be made that they should have shipped without apps at all.
Right.
But,
but then the phone does nothing.
Yeah.
Except tell you the time and the moon phase.
This was another bit of thinking that I was doing, because I'm at the stage where I'm trying. Okay, here are my reactions, and let me try to make sense of these reactions and see if they're valid or not. And something that was an interesting thought I had was that if Apple simply sold this as, here is a cool looking watch, and it has a whole bunch of really cool fitness features, and it will allow notifications from iOS onto this device. And now the deal breaker is, and we're also selling it for $250 and not $400 and not $10,000. I would be saying this is a really, really cool product. It's when you try to add the extra functionality and that it's really falling short. And I'm having the exact same experience with Dan. That's the most disappointing part of it. The number of times we're like, okay, when's the next bus? Well, I have I have this glimpse of from this other app, which I can also get on my phone, and you just take that out. It's the number of times I give up on getting something off the watch and use it on the phone instead. The temperature in some conference room in Cupertino dips down 2 degrees every time that happens, and it's about minus 300 right now.
Now, for me, my ideal watch interaction, actually outside of push notifications, which I do like, is the Major League Baseball glance, which is reliable, and I basically flip it down, check the score. That works great. But you go to an app and then you
how many glances though?
I'm down to like 4.
Yeah, me too.
Me
too. It's unusable.
Don't overglance. Don't overglance.
Well, because if you get 12,
don't over notify either.
Yeah, I agree.
Strip down the phone's capabilities.
Keep it as keep the watch as basic.
If you got a dozen glances, you open up and you're like, all right, where am I? Where is the one I want? Is it right? Is it left? You know, I think it's kind of a nightmare.
Did everybody stand up at 10 to the hour?
No,
I'm surprised.
We all looked at each other.
Jason and I looked at each other like, should we stand?
I think they missed a real opportunity, because you know that everybody in the room's watch went off, including the people on stage. They should have all just said, "Okay, time for a break. Everybody go like this or like this if you're lazy, right?" Let's take a break. You've been very good not talking about music. By the way, Aaron, can I thank you, because this bytecode, intermediate bytecode thing, that is a huge scoop that I don't think anybody's reported on, that I think has really significant meaning.
Right.
There's something going on there. Apple wouldn't require that. And the fact they're requiring it now is I think, telling, is interesting.
PowerPC coming back.
We buried the lead. We buried the lead. That is maybe the most significant thing I've heard from the entire WWDC. That is a weird and interesting change.
We also forget that even when Apple was first talking about OS X, the pre-developer beta release, they were also saying that one of the features of this is going to be CPU independent. That we can basically burn a version of this for any CPU we want. That's part of the fundamental reasons why we're doing this.
Steve Jobs had Avi Tavanian and the rest of the crew at Next doing multi-platform versions of NextStep and OpenStep. Right?
NextStep was multi-platform in the mid-90s.
Yeah,
we were on the Spark chip,
and it was parallel on all of those platforms. It wasn't like, okay, you're done now, we can just leave that alone. They continued to develop it. That was one of the things Apple gained with OS X.
And remember the huge surprise when they went and showed it running on Intel. And everyone was like, what?
Yeah. Well, I think they never want to be caught flat-footed again and feel like, oh no, we're falling behind and we're tied to this hardware, right? They want to be agile. That's a big thing.
They had to shut down the business for 2 years.
There's motion at my front door. Shut up. Okay, that, by the way, that is a great feature of Ring, and I can now look. It was one of our newest sponsors. I can now actually look at my front door and just see what's going on.
There's a squirrel at your front door.
Yeah, unfortunately, I turned up the sensitivity a little too much.
So now, how long till employers start buying their employees the watch? Is my question.
Why? Why would they buy employees the watch?
Track productivity.
Track all sorts of things. I mean, you'd be able to message your employees.
Your heart rate isn't up high enough.
Oh, Lord.
You're not excited enough about the work that you're doing.
You probably could turn it into one of those home arrest bands, just put it around an ankle. And, you know,
they're not so different technology.
It's not so different. Our show today, all right, you guys have been very good. Dan Moren is here, podcaster, 6colors.com, still writes for macworld.com. Nice to have you. Great to have you on the show. Of course, Jason Snell, who we love and sidle up to as often as possible. He's at 6colors.com and the incomparable.
Oh, yes.
And many other places. Yes. And by the way, I was behind the scenes. I'm looking, look, you got a great sponsor on 6 Colors. I think you're doing well.
Thank you.
I feel like you kind of maybe you turned the corner there.
Yeah, we're having a good time.
You're doing all right.
Dan's working with me a couple days a week, and we're writing a lot of stuff. And
I think
it's fun.
I'm really thrilled to
on
hear
our
it.
own. We have no corporate overlords.
No, but
I am the corporate overlord.
You're selling. And by the way, nicely done, subtle ads. These are not annoying.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm folling John Gruber's lead there.
Gruber
right?
does a good job
I've got
with
a
that.
weekly sponsor, and then a single ad from the deck, and that's it. I don't want to plaster my pages with junk.
No,
every now and then people say, are you going to add share buttons, like Facebook share buttons? I'm like, no.
Good for you.
You can share it from your browser. You don't need my buttons to do that, and I would rather they not be there. So,
and he's using a nice programmer font for the timestamps.
I love monospace fonts.
Very
get
important.
those in there.
Very important. Is that in Consolata? What is that?
I'm
like
not sure what that is.
It's a nice
probably
one.
is CSS, so it probably
What do you
degrades.
use for your programmer font?
Menlo.
Menlo.
Yeah, I think I write in Menlo, too.
It's a sweet font.
I actually... Talk about nerd. I have a folder on my Dropbox with programming with fixed width fonts. Droid Sans. There's one called Sheldon. Menlo and Consolata has always been a favorite.
Yeah, Consolis and Consolata.
Consolis is original, right? And Consolata is the...
Yeah, and Menlo's good.
But I've actually eschewed the stuff that Apple ships because of Monaco, frankly.
Monaco's a classic, but it's old.
Oh, it was bad.
Two words. What? Courier Prime.
Courier Prime? I don't know that
Monospace fonts talk has broken out here. Good Lord. What are we doing?
Oh, forget this Apple
Goodbye,
Music
everybody.
thing. Let's talk about Monospace. Courier Prime.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Someone retune like this basic Courier font to make it prettier and a little bit thicker and just greater for like blocks and blocks of text.
I use Courier whenever I fill out PDFs to trick people into thinking I typed it.
On a typewriter.
Yeah. I think somebody should do a Selectric Ball set, like all the different Selectric Ball fonts. That would be nice to have. Aaron Hillegass is here from Big Nerd Ranch. If you want to learn about Swift, get his new book, Cocoa Programming for Mac OS X. The 5th edition is out, and for the first time, it's in Swift.
Yes, I'm very excited about it.
I'm going to get it because I like Swift. Everything I've read about Swift, I feel like it's a modern language.
It's very elegant. It's pretty to look at.
I'm going more in the functional direction, though. You know, I've been teaching myself Lisp.
Yes, there's a lot of nice functional things built in, closures. And
it's really interesting because there were these two forks. There was C and there was Lisp. And C became dominant, and everybody's doing these imperative languages. And suddenly they're saying, you know, this functional, this Lisp stuff wasn't such a bad idea.
Right.
And it's coming back in, and now it's a nice melding of the two. I like it. You can also take classes, and it really. He may say ranch. It's a monastery. It's a place to go where you chant. Oh,
you're gonna scare people. So
no, it's great.
It's in Atlanta, and it's also in Silomar, which is a state park near Monterey.
I didn't know you did it at Silomar.
We do it at Silomar.
Silomar's the most beautiful place in the world.
And then we can do corporate training. We can send someone to your company and teach everybody.
Alex Lindsay's done it. He loved it. He had so much fun. He did the iOS stuff.
That's exactly right. The 1 week iOS class.
Someday I dream of taking a week off. I have, by the way, all these books on that could be my bookshelf. But I got to get the new one. Thank you for being here, Aaron. And of course, Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times, who lisps, but for another reason entirely. No, I'm just teasing. He's a big Emacs.
We all know you're teasing.
I'm teasing because I love. I tease because I love.
I'm talking to the Apple Store tonight.
Oh, if you're in San Francisco for a WWDC, head on over to the Apple Store, the big one, right, downtown?
That's right.
You'll be there at 6:30 p.m. Apple Store, San Francisco. That's kind of like Nirvana, Apple Store, San Francisco.
So 2 years ago when I did it, I spoke, and they told me it was the biggest event they had ever had.
Wow.
And then a half hour later, Boys to Men came in, and that became the biggest event they had ever had. So I tell people now that I open for Boys to Men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boys to Men, always ruining things for other people.
Did you meet them and say, follow that, chump?
I just drop the mic, you know?
Or did you say, am I the boys in this scenario?
Who's the man? Who's the boy here?
What happened there?
Our show today brought to you by IT Pro TV. We're talking about learning here. And if you're in the IT business or you'd like to be in the IT business, you know those certifications are very important to getting a job. But even if you're not trying to get a cert, you're trying to learn and get better at this, this is the place to go. A TV network dedicated exclusively to the world of information technology. It's a nerd dream come true. Hundreds of hours of content, 2 studios, 50 hours of live programming every week, and a course list that just grows all the time. Everything from A+ and Net Plus and Security Plus to CCNA, MCSA, network security. They've just put up now the Ethical Hacker Cert course that Sean Philip Oriano taught. We told you all about that. Hacking Forensics Investigator. You want a job? That's a job. You can. I guarantee you, you go to any police department in the nation, say, I am a forensics expert, you will get a job. Cryptography courses, too. That's just fun for your brain. Sean is a really amazing guy. He's worked with business, but also with the military on this stuff, and actually wrote the book on ethical hacking. You can search for anything you're looking for, and their new search will let you find specific topics, quick answers. You see, this is what's going on live, and this was so cool. You're watching. I mean, I cannot describe how cool this is. You don't have to have a Windows server to take these courses. They have a Windows virtual server and virtual clients you can run in any HTML5 browser, so you can learn all the Microsoft stuff. The Measure Up practice exams are free with your subscription. That's worth $79. You get interaction with the host. They, just like us, they have chat during the live shows and web-based Q&A specific to study topics. It's like a study group for you. Even if you're enrolled in a course or you're buying the books or whatever, this is the best way to learn. I think it's a great adjunct to anything else you're doing. And boy, the price is right. You pay per month or per year. When you buy a year, by the way, you can download the courses and put them on your device and watch on the plane or whatever. They do have corporate and group pricing if you're interested. And in fact, their clients include Harvard, MIT, UCSD, and Stanford, for the top computer companies in colleges in the world. itpro.tv/MacBreak. Normally $57 a month, $570 for the year. We're going to give you 30% off. When you sign up today, you get a free 7-day trial. They always have a free account, by the way. You can watch live anytime, so take advantage of that, too. Go to itpro.tv/MacBreak and use the offer code MacBreak30 to save 30% not on the first month or year, but forever, making it really a good deal. That's less than $40 a month. By the way, right now live until 4 o'clock Eastern this afternoon, they're just about to wrap up for the day, but Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, they're doing courses on pfSense Firewall and updated Network Plus content. That's Don Pizzette who'll be doing that. That's not who you're seeing right now, though, but Don Pizzette will be doing that. IT Pro does that for free with the basic membership, and that you can't beat either. These guys are great. itpro.tv/MacBreak. Use the offer code MacBreak30 to save 30% off for the life of your account. All right, time to talk music. A challenging world. Let me set the stage here because Apple is the #1 retailer of music. iTunes and digital downloads at iTunes dominate the industry entirely. But the world is changing. People have been moving. 100 million people listen to Pandora. 60 million people listen to Spotify. And you're seeing dramatic, almost precipitous drops in record sales over the last few years. Apple obviously recognizes they've got to do something. They buy Beats with Beats streaming service, which on its own was not wildly successful, around 110,000 subscribers when they bought it. Compare that to 100 million or 60 million, you get an idea that Beats was late to the party and perhaps not the strongest. But I think they also felt good about getting Dr. Dre, getting Jimmy Iovine, and maybe even more importantly, getting Trent Reznor, and designing something that they could, is it replace, you feel like it's replace iTunes and purchases with, that this is, I feel like people don't buy music much anymore.
Some people do and some people don't. So
Steve Jobs always said people want to own music.
Well,
that's changed.
Some people do and some people don't. And I think what Apple's trying to do is have it both ways. You can buy music from them. You can stream all your music. It also integrates essentially the features of iTunes Match. So if you have music that's not on their service, it'll get added, and then you'll have access to it too.
I wasn't clear. They weren't clear at the presentation, but they do say that on the webpage.
Right.
That is interesting. That is what Google does now with its All Access Music, and Amazon does with its music. It allows you to upload, and iTunes Match does.
Sure.
But now they allow you to upload and stream via their new music service.
Yeah, so that way, if
that's a competitive advantage.
If Taylor Swift weren't on this service, and maybe she will be, but she's not on the others, and you buy her album, it would just be integrated with all the other music.
I use the Beatles as an example. It's the only way you're going to get Beatles on a streaming music service.
Right, is that you bought them on CD or on iTunes, and they will just show up. But otherwise, I think Beats Music is a good service. I love how they spent time talking about, it's the thing I liked from their music presentation, is they talked about curation. They talked about using human beings to pick playlists, and it's people who understand music who are trying to go beyond the algorithm. And Beats as a music service was really good at, is until the end of the month, that was its thing that it was
That was its thing. That's what Jimmy Iovine stepped forward when they founded Beats and said, we believe we want to bring the human back into the music business.
So I think it's a good service. It was late to the party and hasn't really caught on, but I think Apple...
It's also hobbled by its association with AT&T, I think.
I think it's a smart move. It was a smart move for Apple to take it. I think rebranding it is just fine, but I think that they're inheriting something
some of the
good
Beatsy features, like the sentence is gone.
I'm hanging with my keynote buddies waiting for
That was the unique
Tim
thing.
Cook.
They're also taking away the Beats Android app, and they won't have Android till the fall.
Right.
You know, that's a big audience. It's like not having a Windows app. They will have a Windows app in the fall as well.
Will they take it away, or will they just leave it there?
We don't know.
Yeah, maybe they'll leave it there.
I have to feel.
It isn't even going to be a compatible service.
When this launches in 8.4 at the end of the month, June 30th, I have to feel like the old Beats is going to just say, "Okay, switch over, bye."
It could be.
And for Android users, that's going to be, okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. Well, if that's what they're doing, then
well, and for the Android app is also hobbled in that there's no free access. If you can only get so there's a number of features that if you're using it on iOS or on your Mac, you can get for free. You can listen to Beats One. You can get some of the streaming the radio stations with limited skips. But that's not available as a tier for Android. You have to be a paid subscriber to get anything.
It surprised me that Beats One was free, because that was another differentiator, is we're going to have a 24/7 global radio station with 3 of the best-known disc jockeys in the world who I had never heard of. And that was a differentiator, but that's for, you get that, every Apple user gets that.
Well, but it's a great way to sell music and to get people into the service, right? That's a great way to say, look, we're giving away all this music for free. We've got people who are choosing it. We really want to appeal.
I get it both, because I'll subscribe to Spotify for the same price, $10 a month, and I get Beats One Radio.
But the family price is amazing, right? I mean,
$15.
$15 a month. That's what's
You're willing to use iCloud Family Sharing, which some people have had ups.
Oh, you have to use Family Sharing to do that?
It's tied to your family sharing plan.
Yeah.
I had heard that The Verge said that Spotify was going to respond to that with a similar price. I don't see an announcement.
I don't think they've done
that. Happens when you've got deals with labels, right? Is that you go back to them and say, cut us that same deal for family.
And the tit for tat, by the way, was no free tier. I mean, that's what the labels didn't like. That's what Taylor Swift didn't like. Is the free tier of Spotify and Pandora and all these others.
Well, that's
and
very
Apple's
Apple,
not going to do
right?
that.
That's very Apple to just say, look, pay us. That's what we're here for. Is you pay us money.
There will be some free stuff. You said Radio One is free.
Beats One is free. Some stuff that
iTunes Radio is not going away.
There are still going to be curated stations, and you will be able to listen to them for free with limited skips, much as you can now on iTunes Radio.
So they do have a free tier.
There is some free stuff, but it's less control, right? You can't just go and play any song, I think.
Well, Pandora's like that,
Pandora,
too. Right, yeah.
Closer to Pandora than Spotify.
Not Spotify.
Right.
Yeah, I found that really confusing. I mean, I was expecting to see one just sort of tight ball of music features, but now I'm thinking, okay, so I've got the radio station, plus I've got iTunes Match, plus I've got Apple Radio, plus I've got curated playlists from other people, plus I've got a social media platform. I mean, it really just seems like if I understand what Apple's going for, I really think that they don't want to leave anything behind on the plate. They want to, if there is a way that somebody is experiencing music, they want to have a product that will work with whatever you're going to do, because they don't want people to leave the Apple ecosystem in order to get internet radio, or they don't want to. They like everything except for a curated playlist. So they're going to still be dipping into Spotify for curated playlists. But it made it really, really difficult to follow the story that they were trying to tell yesterday, and it's really all that I was hearing was, okay, we've got that feature from Spotify, and now we've got this feature from this other service you're familiar with. So just, I don't know what to think. It just seems like the note that I have in front of me, taken at the time, was that, okay, you've given me a lot of reasons why this new music system is great for Apple. I don't think you've given me a reason why it's going to be great for me, the customer.
Well, I think the service could be good, although getting all that stuff in a single app is going to be really hard. I think there's no question.
Has anybody seen the app?
They showed the music app on iOS. They have not shown it. So it will integrate in iTunes on the Mac, which is already kind of a cesspool.
It gave me great hope. My heart started pounding a little bit when they showed what looked like a very different iTunes on the screen, and then they didn't say anything more. But do you think they've rewritten iTunes?
Oh, I sure hope so.
I hope so.
But this newest version isn't even that old, so it's unclear whether they're ready to throw that all out already.
I think iTunes is gradually becoming an operating system.
And sentient.
It's the Emacs. It's the Emacs of music
you'll
players.
be able to get mail from it.
But Andy's absolutely right. They didn't make the case, and that's one of my great faults with that section of the keynote. Is not only is it long and boring and overstuffed and self-indulgent and very not Apple keynote, but they have a very interesting, complicated service that they need to make the case for, and instead that was sort of like, here's Drake, he'll tell you some stories, and they didn't make the case that they needed to make.
Story time with Drake.
I don't want to blame Drake.
I thought he was very well spoken.
I liked how natural he was.
He's very good on stage, but he didn't have what he was doing made no sense.
His lead-in was for something that he didn't talk about.
Yeah.
And he was in the middle of kind of a disaster of a presentation. Yeah, I thought he had dignity and told an interesting story, but it wasn't it didn't serve Apple's needs, and they didn't set him up properly, so it made him look like he was off the reservation a little bit, which is bad for him. So, yeah, it was a mess. And it's a shame because Andy's right, this is a complicated service. They really need to explain how iTunes and this service and the streaming and the radio all work together. Yeah. And, they didn't, and everybody came out going, I don't understand what this product is. And that's a failure.
To set the stage, there's Drake. To set by the way, we all want his jacket.
Love the jacket,
yeah. Yeah, we all want his rainbow Apple logo.
No, he was really likable. He was. It was not his fault that he was in the middle of...
He just was off message, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, and that,
It's unclear whether that's him or Apple.
You put musicians on stage, they're not going to be on message. I got bad news. Yeah. Even Jimmy Iovine was not really on message.
No.
He was on something.
He was on something. People keep saying what an asset Jimmy Iovine is. I don't
Maybe
get
not
that yet.
front facing,
probably not
possibly
on stage.
behind the scenes. Yeah, I don't think he's
in the music
biz,
stage here though. I want to take a poll of you guys. How do you listen to music? What service do you use, Dan?
I mainly listen to stuff that I own in iTunes. I've started using the free Spotify tier a little bit more for things that I'm just like, I'm not sure if I want to buy this, but I want to audition it first. But most of the stuff I listen to is stuff I've owned, ripped from CDs or bought from iTunes. Yeah.
How about you, Jason?
I bought a year of Beats, and I listen to it occasionally, but most of what I listen to is still stuff I bought or bought on iTunes or Amazon or ripped from CD.
You know what? I bought the little Apple USB that the Beatles released with 24-bit remixes, the 2009 masters. I listen to that a lot in my head. Aaron, how do you listen to music? So programmers need music.
Yeah.
You got to have music.
It depends on the setting, right? So in the house, Spotify, we're a Spotify family. That's streaming over the speakers in the house. But in my car, I have a CD player that has MP3 player. MP3 decoder in it.
CDs?
So I'll burn CDs with MP3s on them.
Wow.
And I get those from Amazon. So, I'm going back to
never used the CD player in my car, which I've had for like 3 years now.
Yeah.
Never put
I've had the same CD in it for the entire 3 years.
You can't get it out.
I have a mix. When I got the stereo, I had a mixed CD that I had made in like 2001. And I was like, oh, well, I'll stick this in there, and that's it.
Steve Martin sent me his new Bluegrass CD 3 years ago. I said, wow, a CD. I put it in. I haven't taken it out. I like it, though. Every once in a while, I listen to it. It's nice to have. Andy, how do you listen?
I'm like Jason. I'm like Dan. I tend to buy music. The gold standard is that if I buy it on CD, it means I love this so much I want to own it in uncompressed, unlocked format, so I can remaster it in years to come. But for discovery, I do have a Google Music account, which I pay for because I got in at $8 a month.
Yep,
but
me too.
Oddly, and so I use that for a lot of sampling and discovery, and for just magical syncing of my music library everywhere. But the weirdest thing is that when I hear about an album or a band or anything, the first place I go is YouTube, because it's either there's an official video or someone has taken the album and posted it illegally to YouTube, and I will use that as my sampling corridor. And then if I decide that, okay, that really is a cool album, then I'll go back to Amazon or wherever and buy the full album.
I think we proved we were just all old fogies buying our music.
It sure sounds like it. You don't sound like...
I just don't like the idea of... I love curating my own playlists, and I don't like the idea of, if I ever stop paying for Spotify, this playlist that I've spent like 3 or 4 or 5 years now just sort of curating and new songs come in and old ones that I thought I liked, I don't like so much. I just want to have control of all of those files and know that no matter what happens, if this company goes away, if they get bought by a company I don't approve of, or if I simply decide that, look, I'm now spending $43 a month on various subscription music services, I need to cut one of these. I want to be able to have, I want the truth, so to speak, of my music library to live on my own computer.
Well, here's the more telling question for those of you. I don't have kids, but for those of you who do, how do they listen to music?
YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube seems to be one of the most popular ones.
Spotify, Pandora.
Yeah. So streaming.
It was LimeWire for a long time. Their generation. In fact, LimeWire got to be such a problem when they were in their early teens that I used iTunes to give them allowances. So you had like a $10 or $20 a month allowance, 1 or 2 CDs a month, trying to convince them that it'd be better to buy music, and they did do that. But I think Spotify. But mostly, if they're hanging out in the house, they'll start a YouTube thread up, and it might be on the TV, and they have it going in the background. That just seems to be how kids today like to. It's like MTV was for us, maybe. Yeah. Do you have kids?
I have 2 kids, 2 boys,
old?
14 and 10.
Perfect.
And the 14-year-old downloads them from the iTunes store, and he buys them. Once again, with typically gift certificates.
Do you encourage him to buy? Like, let's support the artists? Because that's what I was trying to give the message to the kids was support your artists.
Yeah, I do believe that, but I've never introduced him to BitTorrent, so.
Wait till they find it. But I got back into music because of Napster. I was suddenly, I went through a bad spell because I was a DJ. No one hates music more than people who have to play music every single day, all day. That was my job. Didn't want to listen to music when I got home. But when Napster came out and I was no longer a DJ, I rediscovered my love for music and the variety of music that was out there. Downloaded 10,000 songs easily from Napster.
But so you won't be DJing Beats One, though, is what you're saying.
No, I won't. Anyway, I won't. Don't get me started on radio. But now it's Spotify for me. Pandora for a long time. I still pay for a pro account in both of those for a paid account. I also have Google Music because it was $8 like Andy, and I really like the fact that both Google and Amazon let me upload my my collection. Yeah. Again, I want those Beatles to be available, on my streams.
I love the automatic workflow. I buy all my music from Amazon, not necessarily because they're the best store, but because if I buy it from Amazon. Right. Without doing anything. First a copy goes into my Amazon locker, so it's available there. Then it gets automatically by a helper app downloaded into my iTunes library, and then the Google Music plugin sees it in my iTunes library and uploads it to Google Music. So it's like no matter where I am, if I'm within spitting distance of 2 chips and an LED, I can get access to my entire music library. It works great.
So just looking at this panel, and maybe we're not typical, but we all have figured out how we're going to listen to music, right? We all have our thing that we do, whatever it is. Apple's got to take us and change how we do it.
Well,
they are offering it for free for 3 months. You don't think so?
I don't think they do. I think that's the advantage of where Apple is here, is that by mixing a store and a streaming service, they let you do what you want, and you can buy some and stream some.
So people like you two who are iTunes guys, this is going to be a very natural transition.
Yeah, well, and I'm also a Beats subscriber, so yeah, it's going to be.
But you did that probably because Apple bought Beats.
No, I actually checked it out before then. I like the curation idea, and it's a nice service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, don't downplay how big it is for Apple to have. This is the music service that's going to come pre-installed on every single phone and every single iPad and then every single MacBook out there. And I think there's a reason why the Notes app, as bad as as feature minus as it used to be, was the most popular Notes app on iOS because you get it for free. You don't have to go and learn. You don't have to choose. And so with a whole bunch of on the other side of our planet. People getting their first real iPhones, that's no small deal. I mean, it's also you hear the reason why the youth consumer dollar is so valuable is because people, if you're between the ages of 13 and 27, you have not formed loyalty to a brand yet. It's not so much that these people are so different, but so much as they're open to having Pepsi or RC Cola instead of Coke. They're open to using this music service instead of this other music service. So once you get people thinking that. Just like me thinking that, well, look, I'm using Amazon MP3 to buy my music from. I'm sure the others are great, but I don't really need to check it out anymore. you get locked into your ways, and that you want to get them before they've their fontanelles, their consumer fontanelles have closed in, so to speak.
To Andy's point, I think one of the interesting things that is sort of downplayed in the initial announcement is how widely available Apple Music seems to be. They have not given
100 countries, didn't they say? Yeah.
Well, the Beats One certainly is in 100 countries. I was just looking at the press release. They're not specifying in the press release. They say music fans around the world. Yeah. Now, Apple does have the clout to potentially cut music deals that do include all of this, because they're a global company. That is a very big
something
deal.
that Spotify has built up over many years. But I think 100 countries is more than Spotify has.
Right, and even if the Apple Music, like the streaming service, isn't available in all those countries, even just having Beats One as a taste of that available in 100 countries is a huge deal.
I think you're right. I think that's something that I actually mentioned that yesterday, that Apple does, maybe thanks to iovine, have the clout with the record labels, probably more because they're the biggest retailer.
Right.
Although Amazon is really formidable. When you talk about the Echo,
I'd hate
for
to
example,
be competing,
the
Echo plays
service,
Amazon only, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one thing, at least.
And my Android TV plays Google only. That's one thing that we observed, I think, Andy, yesterday, was the increased siloification of all of these services. They're more and more becoming, you'll use Apple or you'll use Google or you'll use... Microsoft's the one player that seems to want to play everywhere.
Yeah.
But Apple and Google very much going in these separate tracks.
On the TV side too, Netflix, Hulu, Apple, Amazon, Google, everybody's got their own TV service that they want you to use, and that's tricky when you're trying to find the one show that you're looking for.
Yeah. That was another sort of continuing thread from during the keynote yesterday, I thought, where I don't think Apple still has the sort of power where they can kill Vesper or Evernote or other note-taking apps by improving notes. I don't think that they can kill Flipboard or other news apps by creating their own. But I think that you're seeing a concerted effort to control more, entice users to let Apple control more of the experience, and say, please never leave the Apple ecosystem. There's nothing bad about that at all. But it seems as though they want to say, if we can observe and control the more of stuff you do, it will make it easier for us to give you great services like our Google Now type of thing, without having to worry about sending your information to a third party, and also make sure that we have a measure of control about the data that's coming in, and also being able to learn things not about you specifically, but about our customers in general, that we're not learning when we're sending people into a Google search, or when we're sending people into Facebook to check out their newsfeed. So maybe it's just the volume of announcements that were like that, where they're saying, we don't want you to use Spotify, we don't want you to use Evernote, we don't want you to use Flipboard, we want you to use our Apple products. Maybe it's just the number of them coming at the same time that started to make me think that they're being a little bit more, I wouldn't say aggressive, but seeing the opportunity of what we can do if our users spend as much time underneath the Apple umbrella as possible.
Anything else to say about music? I thought we'd have a much longer conversation. It's not a disappointment. It's about right.
No, I think the presentation
it's just not exciting.
Was not good. I think that I mean, and that's, you always have these two levels with an Apple keynote. You've got your criticism of the stagecraft, and then you've got the breakdown of what they announced. And I think on a stagecraft level, the rest of the show was really solid and very Apple, and then the music part was bloated and bad and was not their best effort. And we can speculate about whether that's because they had to fill in for Apple TV at the last minute or what.
Maybe, yeah.
But the service itself, I don't think in the end it's going to matter. We're going to forget what the keynote, stagecraft was, and the service will stand or fall on its own. Giving it away for 3 months, we're all going to get to try it out and see if it's any good and if it's worth paying for.
Mm-hmm. That is probably the smartest thing and the best thing Apple can do, which is just hope that people will sample.
Yeah.
I don't find the radio station particularly compelling. I'm not sure what the point of that is even. It feels feels like Jimmy, I'll be honest, feels like Jimmy Iovine comes from an older era of music, of record labels, who still thinks that DJs matter and that radio matters and that this is something people want.
Well, it matters to some people. It's a slice of the audience. My daughter has really gotten into radio on the satellite radio, listening to the big pop stations from New York and LA. So I think there was a teenage audience.
Those are the most
maybe
canned DJs of all. I mean,
I know. I think that's the idea here, is they want to be like Radio 1, BBC Radio 1, right, with Beats One, and that is a popular, successful, young, station for people who love music. It's not for everybody, but if they can get that group, that'll be good for them.
Will they support Sonos? Will Sonos support them?
Yeah, good question.
Good question.
That actually is a make or break for me. I want to have it in my Sonos.
I think it defines one of the problems. It's what question one is it going to be worth paying for? But then the question two, the big one is going to be, is it going to be worth switching away from whatever I'm using right now for?
My hope about this is that since there's going to be an Android app, that Apple will be more open to getting these things on devices like Sonos, because they want this to be something you can take everywhere, and Apple's hardware isn't everywhere.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that's if you're somebody who's an existing.
Sonos is probably a small subset. Though,
yeah, but is Apple targeting stealing away existing people, or is Apple trying to find new people who haven't tried it before? I think that's a better potential audience for them maybe than stealing away people from Spotify. We'll see.
I get in this fight all the time about radio and and it's funny because half my income comes from terrestrial radio, broadcast radio, but I just don't see people listening to radio. I mean, they listen in their cars. The only place people listen. Does your daughter listen at home? Like, do you have a little clock radio?
She does Pandora at home.
Yeah.
And but in the car, she is always hitting the radio station.
That almost feels like to me she listens in the car because she doesn't have bandwidth.
That could be. But not everybody has enough.
No, I know.
I mean,
but we're moving.
The one time my daughter buys music is because she's going on a long car trip and she knows she can't use her data to stream.
Right.
So that is part of it.
When you sit and you look at Spotify and you compare that with the offerings on XM or Sirius, the satellite radio fails miserably.
No, I was thinking, somebody on Twitter the other day asked me if I thought that Apple should buy Sirius XM, and I thought, that's not a terrible idea.
Oh, it's a terrible idea.
No, because the satellite things are going to be dead. You just want to take the content and put it online.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right? You don't even want to be on the satellites because that business will be dead
business.
because everybody's going to just be streaming content from data.
Yeah.
But you could take the content and do something with it, and that might be interesting. I don't know. Call me. Serious. We'll make a deal. I don't represent anybody.
God, I thought we'd do an hour at least on the music thing. I guess not.
We could talk about Eddie Q shirts, but let's not.
Eddie Q is becoming more and more. I mentioned yesterday, there's in every company, in every group, in every classroom, there's one person that's not like being bullied, but is the butt of many jokes. Like there's always a Needles or a Prager or somebody that people just. I bet you at Big Nerd Ranch, there's one guy you kind of make jokes about.
Paul.
Eddie Q is Paul. Eddie Q has become Paul. He's like, oh, there's Eddie again at the karaoke. And he's like, what's the shirt with the one thing up and he's like living up to his
he's the guy, he's schmoozing with the showbiz people.
I love him. Good for you, Eddie.
And at the Warriors games.
There was diversity on the Apple stage, but it was mostly New Jersey versus Carolina versus California, right? That was the diversity.
We got 2 women Apple executives on stage.
That did not feel like diversity.
Well, it was more diverse than it's been because it wasn't just middle-aged white guys.
Christy Turlington.
And it wasn't, just models.
Middle-aged white guys and models.
Well, look, you've got an executive in charge of Apple Pay.
I don't know anything about this particular panel, but...
we're very diverse today.
Yeah, right.
Our diversity couldn't come today.
I'm the last guy you should talk about diversity with.
We have the full spectrum from nerds to dweebs.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to say about not just music, but about the whole thing? Aaron, you're looking forward to going back. What are the sessions you're most interested in attending?
So, gosh, let me see. I'm really excited about the search APIs on OS 9.
Yeah, because it looks like search is going to be very broad now.
Very broad.
And
I'll be able to
natural language.
let users search inside my apps.
Oh.
And that's a new API.
Interesting.
It's a Spotlight on iOS 9.
What have they done to put natural language in there? How are they doing that?
And I think it's basically Siri Smarts, and then you give it keywords and things that it can search against.
I think that'd be exciting for it.
Very exciting. I mean, whenever we talk about the Echo or Google Now or Siri, the developer's always saying, okay, well, how am I going to hook my software into this? And this is sort of the first step towards that. So Google at I.O. announced there was going to be an API for Google Now.
Right.
And now we're seeing this searchability added to iOS 9. So I'm excited about that.
I don't know if anybody cares. I'm looking at some of the notes from the Apple Music. It will stream at 256 kilobits, not the extreme version available on
320.
Spotify of 320. And, of course, Tidal offers CD quality, uncompressed CD quality.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? Does anybody care? I don't think anybody cares.
Can anybody hear the difference?
And if they can, they'll update it later, like they did in the past with iTunes Music, right? When they had iTunes Plus and stuff. So.
Right. iTunes Plus is 320 kilobit AAC.
AC, yeah.
And this is a little disappointing. Apple's Music will not include streaming Beatles, even though you can buy the Beatles in the iTunes Store. You will not be able to
Another
stream
opportunity for Apple Core to get some more money out of it.
What the hell is wrong? Are they the last that Metallica's given up, right? The Stones gave up. Led Zeppelin
Taylor
gave up.
Swift took her ball and went.
I'm surprised that Apple didn't lock down those rights when they negotiated their giant Beatles deals all those years ago.
Because Steve Jobs said we will never stream. People want to own music. That's
Plus
why.
I think they're just smart enough to know that there is no other band that's like the Beatles. There's nothing that has that sort of representation inside the library. So given that they're already making money hand over fist, they can just simply say, we're willing to wait and let you dangle and not have the Beatles catalog.
And then when they get it, they'll be able to have a giant event, too, and talk about how exciting it is.
Yep.
Let's hope there's still Beatles alive to be part of that keynote.
I should be clear. If you bought the Beatles from iTunes,
it'll be in there.
You can stream it.
Yeah. As part of the streaming library that you get access to when you buy your $10 a month subscription fee.
And I presume because I've bought the Beatles so many times, not on iTunes but everywhere else, including uploaded these 24 bits, that I will be able to stream it as part of my own library.
Certainly.
Yeah. Anything I own, I can stream, even if it's something like a Daily Gizwiz theme song.
Yeah, if you had a bootleg of some band's concert that was never released, you could upload that and it would be there.
Taylor Swift did keep her album on Beats, so they will have Swift, right? Not that I'm...
You mean the programming?
I'm not asking for myself.
You mean the programming language, right?
Yeah.
She kept her albums, but not her new album, I think.
1984 is not... I mean, I think that's the name of her new album. I'm sorry, I'm outed now. I like Taylor. I'm a Swiftie. Just making sure we got everything.
I want to talk about one of our new courses.
1989. You are out of yourself.
George Orwell.
Right. Yeah. Or George Orwell.
We keep going up.
Music.
Keep going up. There's another story we want.
Apple. I wanted to talk about our new course.
Please do. Where is that here?
So
let's talk about your new course. Oh, yeah. You are one of the small group of people working with Apple on this mobility partner program. What is this?
So if you listen to the earnings call at the end of Q2, the CFO came forward and said, iPad sales, he was going over iPad sales, and they haven't been super stellar lately.
23% down,
And so Apple is now, in a very strange and radical and wonderful thing, partnering with sort of best of breeds in the business world for software,
they did this with IBM,
iOS.
right?
IBM was the first one.
Yeah.
And so they announced that there's now 24 more. And you mentioned several of them: Box, DocuSign, Service Max.
Yeah.
One of the ones he didn't mention is Big Nerd Ranch.
Congratulations.
So we have taken responsibility for training the other mobility partners, engineers, to make sure that they are ready to really level up their apps. So when IBM and Apple did their deal, IBM and Apple came to us and asked us to develop a special course. And so if you go to the next link, we have a course which is iOS development in Swift for the enterprise.
Wow.
And we have been teaching this all over the world for IBM. It's been really well received. It's Swift. It's the fundamentals of iOS development. And then there's a bunch of enterprise-specific topics for business programmers, which is encryption, using the keychain, using web services and caching the results in core data. So we're really excited about this particular program, and we'll be helping make applications for iOS in the business world that much better.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, that's great. BigNerdRanch.com. And, I imagine that porting an enterprise app from whatever the hell platform IBM has, Lotus 123, I don't know, to iOS must be challenging for some of these
It is challenging, but once again, IBM has such a long history of great programming. It's sometimes logistically tricky to get everything together in the Philippines, but once we get there, the engineers are always top-notch.
Nice.
It's been really an honor to work with both IBM and Apple on this.
That's great. All right. Prepare your picks, ladies and gentlemen. Dan Moren is here, and Jason Snell, both from 6colors.com, Big Nerd Ranch's Aaron Hillegass, and, of course, Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. And each of them will offer you something wonderful when we come back. But first, a word from something wonderful. LegalZoom.com. Not a law firm. I want to say this right up front. That's a good thing. Because if you are an entrepreneur, you're starting a business, the last thing you want to do is spend thousands of dollars with a law firm to protect your business with an incorporation or an LLC, or to trademark your brand and your products and your services, or to apply for a patent. And with LegalZoom, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars, because you can do it yourself at LegalZoom.com. That's what I did. And, you know, we're still using the operating agreement, the LLC papers that I filed 10 years ago with LegalZoom.com. It's been great. If you have a new business, protect your business, go to LegalZoom.com. Now, you may end up with questions, and the nice thing, this is new, relatively, since I started using them. They've added now the LegalZoom legal plan, which is they can connect you with an independent attorney. They've pre-negotiated flat rates with attorneys in almost every state of the union. And you can talk to them and get your questions answered at an amazingly affordable price. They can even help you if you have a great idea, but you're not sure where to begin. LegalZoom.com. They're not a law firm, but you can get advice from LegalZoom's network of independent attorneys in most states. Plus, all the paperwork, all the stuff you need, the guidance, the step-by-step, you walk through it. They do it all. I love it. We did our wills that way. It's just incredible. Make the smart choice for your home, your family, and your business at LegalZoom.com today. And don't forget to enter MBW in the referral box at checkout for a special discount to celebrate the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the business people who are changing the world around us. By the way, they also have a pet agreement so that if you die, your pet goes to a good home. And I'm just saying, I got to do that. I got now a dog and 2 cats. I need the pet protection agreement. Protect your pet. LegalZoom.com, $10 off at LegalZoom.com when you use the offer code MBW. All right, let's see. Let's start with the newbie around here. Dan Moren, what do you got?
So recently I went to travel to Europe, and I was looking for stuff to load up on my iPad.
I'm going in 3 weeks. Give me good stuff.
Oh, well,
give me good stuff.
Specifically, I was looking for something to do when I was traveling on the plane. I didn't have internet, and so I decided I was really interested. I've been getting a little bit more and more into comics recently, again, having been a comic reader when I was a teenager, and I'm sure Jason and I know Andy are both comics readers as well. But I picked up a free month of Marvel Unlimited, which is Marvel's sort of Netflixy-like service where you can, sign up for a monthly fee and read a bunch of comics, pretty much anything in their library. They've got a lot of older titles. They also have newer titles, although they tend to be a little more delayed, I think. They're like 6 months or so. But I've read a bunch of series on there, and they let you do offline reading, which was huge for me. So I could download a dozen titles that I could read on the plane.
So you can get as many as you want.
Yeah,
as many as you can fit on your iPad.
Well, you can, if you have an internet connection, you can read anything that's in their library. If you want to download stuff offline, I think they give you a dozen slots, sort of.
A dozen, all right,
yeah, and then you can swap them in and out. Then when you have an internet connection again, but it's really been great, and it's so much more affordable than trying to go out and buy comics issue by issue, because you pay one fee per month, and you can sort of read anything in Marvel's library. It's a great way to read, especially the storylines that go all across these different titles. So, sometimes they have these big events and they go across a dozen different titles, and, it's hard to keep track of them sometimes. So they do a nice job of sort of bringing those storylines together and putting them all in one single place. So.
They do not do a good job of this table, however.
I will say, yeah, they're not without their glitches. But
apparently, if you spend more money, you get nothing.
You get weird checkboxes.
You get no checks.
That's a bad deal too. That's like you get a figurine and you're in the fan club for $99.
Yeah,
so don't buy that.
Yeah, but if you go with the basic one, go with the basic one. That's a good deal.
Okay.
Give you a lot of access to great comics titles. So
$10 a month. 15,000 titles. I've not read any of these, so it's really, for me, a great
There you go.
deal.
You can start right out there.
Yeah, and
it doesn't take very long for you to earn that $69 a year, let me tell you. That's like 2 plane rides, and you've read more than $70.
Right, when issues goes for $3 or $4 these days, you can make up that $10 pretty fast.
Cool.
The price of comics kind of drove me off of particularly Marvel comics, because you don't get a full story with one issue, and you read it in 10 minutes. And you have to read a year's worth of not only this one Avengers comic, but this other Avengers comic. And it was the Marvel Unlimited that got me back, because I'm willing to wait like 6 months to a year, but then be able to actually read all of this like in one sitting where I can really actually follow it. It's a great deal.
Like, my parents will be really happy because I can get rid of that last shoebox of comics that was in their attic forever. So
I am amazed they didn't sell them.
I don't think they're worth anything.
Yeah.
I'm amazed they didn't burn them.
Burn them or something. Yeah. You have good parents.
Yeah, they're librarians. They're very opposed to burning any sort of reading material.
That's why. My daughter's been gone a week, and I've already thrown her stuff out. Takes no time for me. Jason Snell, what do you got?
It's actually a little bit of breaking news. So I have a TiVo DVR at home, and I love it.
Yeah. And
you've been able to, for a while now, watch your TiVo programs from your DVR on iOS in your house or out of your house. But I'm sitting there at my desk working on my Mac, and I want to call up a live broadcast or a show that's on the DVR, and I can't because they support iOS, but they don't support the Mac. Well, today they released TiVo Online, which is online.tivo.com, and you log in with your TiVo account on your Mac or PC with your web browser. And as long as you're in the house with the DVR, they haven't yet got the out-of-home
I can't
stuff.
do it out here.
You can't do it out here. But as long as you're in the house, hopefully they'll add some out-of-home because you've got that on iOS. But if you're in the house, you can stream your live TV or your recordings to your computer from your DVR, which you couldn't used to do. And it's nice.
Wow.
Because I get the baseball game on there. That's the way I can get a little baseball game up in the corner of my local team, because you can't stream that with the MLB app, but you can do it from the TiVo.
I liked it when it was called Aereo. Sorry.
Too soon. Damn.
No, but I love my TiVo, and the fact that I can watch my I just recently discovered I could take out my iPad and watch my TiVo.
Yeah, it's like your iPad is a TV.
All my recordings.
So now your Mac and PC can be a TV too.
That is nice. But and do you think they'll ever have it so that I could do it remotely?
I'm sure they will at some point, because they already do that on iOS and Android.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time. I think perhaps it was too complicated for them to implement it on the PC.
I could see all my recordings. I guess that would be so that I could record more stuff. Right?
And they've got links to the streaming versions of those shows as well as what's on your recordings on your DVR.
Oh, so this, if I click this, will take me like the Hulu
Central.
or okay, I get it. Okay. Well, hey, that's better than nothing. But I hope that they eventually let me do this.
Yeah, I think that. I assume that would be stage 2, and maybe there's some rights issues.
I thought the Romeo did that for some reason. Oh, yeah, it takes me to HBO Go. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I have a subscription to that, so what the hell?
Yeah.
Good tip. Breaking news. Online.tivo.com.
Yeah.
Aaron Hillegass, what do you got for us?
So there is a mini-series going on the National Geographic Channel that is great fun. And it's funny to remember that everything that we work in was once made up by somebody. And these were people with all the flaws and challenges of being people. And so this, a lot of them are people pitted against each other. So like Edison versus Tesla and Oppenheimer versus Heisenberg.
Oh.
And I'm bringing this up on MacBreak Weekly because on June 1st, they aired Jobs versus Gates. And it's a combination of both a dramatization and also some talking heads first-hand historical look at that.
The competition to control the personal computer, 1974 to 1999.
So I thought your listeners would probably enjoy that.
What fun is that? That looks great. And so it is dramatization. I mean, there's a guy who looks kind of like Bill, and that's neat.
And then there's
actually a
historical
pretty good
documents
website.
as well.
The website is pretty interesting. Paul Allen gives Bill Gates an article that will change history. Jobs and Wozniak for this is really nicely done. Wow, what a website. American Genius and the most recent one, you I presume can go back and
they're online.
Jobs versus Gates, and actually the online site is pretty rich. It's full of stuff. Andy Ihnatko, pick of the week.
My pick is a really cool, simple service that Waze, the navigation app, car navigation app, has rolled out. They have created a whole set of like 50 to 60 different Twitter accounts that do nothing but tell you about unusual traffic situations in a specific city. So if you subscribe to like the Boston Twitter account, every time users of the Waze app are reporting a situation that Waze knows is unusual for that time of day or that location, it will tweet out, here is what's happening. There's a major accident on near exit 3 near Wareham on I-95. There's construction on this place, and it's not like a flood of stuff either. It's like it's truly stuff where there is a major accident. Commute times are now 27 minutes slower. It's curated. I believe it's curated a little bit because some of these look like they're automatically generated whenever the system sees that there is an unusual situation happening. But then when it looks like it's an ongoing thing, then you start to see a human sort of touch. There was a situation. I subscribed to the Boston one, but the Boston one actually covers much more than Boston metro area. It's like the entire like eastern New England like commuter belt along I-95. And so there was some sort of an event happening near Providence that I was just watching because it's a little bit like, watching a sports score, saying how far is this going? And it got from like 20-minute delay down to like an hour-long delay, and then they were using words like brutal. and then brutal. Then you can click through and see like a map that's actually, you can actually see it like a virus like expanding as cars are trying to route around it. Now all kinds of roads around it are getting like are turning from orange to red, and you know that I was going to run errands this afternoon, but I'm not going to do that today. Or I know I got to be somewhere at 4 p.m., but I'm definitely not going to try driving that way. For years I've been hoping and expecting that there'd be a simple service that would simply tell me what's traffic like today. What am I going to run into if I try to be on this road? And there are, with Google Maps and with Waze and other apps, there are ways to sort of maybe find that out. But this is by far the best system I've ever seen that will just simply alert you to a situation that you want to know about at the time you want to know about it. There's mostly U.S. cities. There are about 60 in total, and about maybe a dozen of them are internationals, or outside the United States of America. But they seem to be doing a good job of getting this live for most metro areas. There's a San Francisco one of it. There's Boston. There's Denver. There's you have a good chance of checking it out. And like I said, there have been times in the past 2 or 3 weeks since I discovered this that I have changed my plans based on what I saw in my Twitter feed.
I'm going to recommend something I haven't watched, but Steve Gibson's been raving about it. Mr. Robot, has anybody watched it yet? It's a show that's going to premiere June 24th on USA Networks, and they've put the first episode up, and people are raving. Did you watch it? Because it's the first time on network television that the technology has actually been accurate and right? I
believe Steve.
Yeah, Steve says it's amazing. If you want to have some fun, they have a great promo site, whoismrrobot.com. that will give you a fake Unix prompt, Linux prompt, and all sorts of stuff. But this looks very interesting. It's about a hacker who has decided that there's something going on, and he doesn't know what it is, but he's gonna. It looks great. You can get it for free on iTunes as well, I believe, and of course at the USA Network's website. And the show itself will be on television starting on the 24th. But we'll be talking about it. Steve's already warned me on Security Now in just a few minutes. Whoismrrobot.com, or just go to USA Network and watch the pilot for Mr. Robot. There he is. He's wearing a hoodie, so you know it's technically accurate. Yeah. Very important. Hey, boy, what a great panel. I want to thank you all for being here. It's really nice to have you. Dan Moren, 6colors.com, macworld.com. You have other podcasts?
Yes, The Rebound, which is at reboundcast.com, and Clockwise, which I do with Mr. Snell, which is over at relay.fm/clockwise. So
is the Rebound all about NBA basketball?
It is nothing to do with NBA basketball.
I'm excited about the Warriors, and Game 3 is tonight. I thought maybe that's what you'd be talking about.
Lex Friedman, John Moltz, and myself talking about
Moltz.
John Moltz, talking about technology.
Oh, good.
For short, and occasionally maybe a little irreverent. Let's put it that way.
Sounds like fun.
It is.
Jason Snell's at 6colors.com. Great place to go. Have you had any trouble with your Apple Watch, like losing your phone and not giving you notifications and stuff like that?
No, it's been doing pretty
Lisa's having all sorts of trouble, and mine is very sporadic on notifications. Like sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Just curious.
It's working okay for me.
I think it's dopey.
I hear that about you.
I'm just really rubbing it in now. It's just dopey. Thank you, Jason. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great
Love
to
it
be
when
here.
you come up
Always.
here. Keep coming back. You too, Aaron Hillegass.
It's a pleasure.
Big Nerd Ranch is in Atlanta, and boy, I'm really jealous on the West Coast at the beautiful Asilomar
Conference Center.
They used to do the TED conference there.
Yeah. That's where the TED conference began. When are you in Asilomar?
You can go on the website and find the schedule.
I might do that one.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because that's a beautiful... I used to live in Pacific Grove and would run down the 21 mile.
So we do iOS, Mac, Android, JavaScript.
Fun.
Ruby
so it's not just Apple.
No.
Anything you want.
Anything you want, I'll teach you.
You got a Lisp course?
Someday soon.
You want to work on that? Andy Ihnatko, Chicago Sun-Times. Always a pleasure. CWOB.com is his personal website. And he's here every Tuesday. Renee, I guess, is traveling home, which is why he wasn't here, but he will be back, I'm sure, next week.
I'm looking forward to hearing him talk about all the services that are not available in Canada.
Oh, man. We had Georgia Dow on, and every time they announced something new, it was like,
Belize,
England, but
it's
not
available in Belize, but not Canada. Come on.
Come on. Yeah, that'll be back next Tuesday. That's when we do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. It's nice if you can watch live or join us, as a good number of people did in studio. Email tickets at twit.tv. We'll put a chair out for you. We'll try to find you one of the comfortable ones. Sorry, Oliver. Oh, that doesn't look very comfortable. But if we can't, the sooner you email, the better your chance of getting a comfortable chair will be. Let's put it that way. If you can't watch it live in studio or on the internet, you can always download on-demand audio or video at twit.tv/MBW. The new site goes up day after tomorrow. So if you get there and it looks all weird and different, that's why. But you can also get it at iTunes or whatever they call it these days. They still call it iTunes?
Who knows?
We don't know. Apple Music Tune. And all the other podcast places, including probably 3 or 4 apps on your phone, including those Twit apps. You have a Twit app on your phone. You should put one there if you don't. Thanks for joining us. Now back to work, because you know what? Break time is over. Bye-bye.